August 5th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. I would ask, Mr. Peckins, could you take the roll call, please?
Hauser,
Yes?
Bixson,
Here.
Gasson,
Here.
Kenjuk,
Here.
Bachman, Lloyd, Stone,
Here.
Clauser.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Would you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. So on the agenda, line item number 3 is the election of Planning Commission officers. As you may know, we are down one member, and at the conclusion of the meeting this evening, we're going to do an election for chairperson and vice chairperson and I guess maybe secretary and treasurer to the extent that we need to, but I know at least for chairperson and vice chair, okay? So we'll do that at the conclusion of the meeting. So for right now, we will jump ahead to line item number 4, and that's public comment. Is there anyone who would like to comment on an issue not on the agenda this evening? I don't see anyone standing up. Anyone online?
No one is online.
Okay, all right. No one having come up, we will close the public comment section, and we will go to line item number 5, which is the approval of the minutes. This is the consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting of July 1st, 2024.
So moved.
Okay. Motion by the mayor. Support?
Support.
Commissioner Clauser. Okay, any discussion? Mr. Peckins, roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bixson,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Gassig,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, line item number 6, public hearings, letter A. This is the notice of public hearing for the market and the Graham located at 265 East 2nd Street. Site plan request to convert the former animal hospital to new community market space and an addition containing public restrooms and a covered performance stage with upgrades to adjacent farmers market parking lot. Mr. Banda, would you like to, or should I hand it over to Vidya?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go video.
Okay, Vidya, the table is yours.
Okay, thank you, Chairman Hauser,
You're
members
welcome.
of the commission. I will share the site plan on the screen. Can you see the site plan at this time?
We can.
Yes, okay. So the request before you tonight is from AKA Architects on behalf of Rochester DDA to construct a 2,416 square foot addition to an existing building. The site is located at the northwest corner of East 2nd Street and Water Street and is zoned I-1 with a total area of 1.95 acres. With regard to the use, the proposed public facility use in the I-1 district, it is permitted as a special exception use. So when the Planning Commission grants approval, it is for site plan and special exception approval. The applicant appeared before you for a preliminary hearing on July 1st and was scheduled for a public hearing at this meeting. With regard to the setbacks, the existing building on the site that was previously a veterinary clinic, that is an existing legal non-conforming building since it does not comply with the required front yard setback on either East 2nd Street or along Water Street. Now, when the applicant previously appeared before you at your last meeting, the proposed addition that you see over here, it was shown closer to this end, lining up with this end of the building. At that time, the addition required a variance from the front yard setback along Water Street. Since then, the applicant has revised the site plan to shift the addition further west. So at this time, they are not seeking a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the building addition, and the building addition is compliant with the setback requirements for the ordinance. With regard to access and circulation, the existing site and building has got two-way access drive off East 2nd Street, and the farmers market lot that is currently owned by the DDA to the north has also got an access drive off East 3rd Street. While these two parcels are not connected for vehicle traffic to move through, the applicant is proposing a barrier-free access ramp that goes down to connect the upper parking lot to the main building itself, where this building will host the open market and any summer markets and other events. This access drive will be maintained for two-way movement of vehicles, except when there is an event taking place. This parking lot will be closed off in order to accommodate vendors who will be placed along the west side of the property line itself. Otherwise, the existing parking lot is available for parking, as is the lower parking lot on this site. With regard to pedestrian circulation, there are existing sidewalks along East 2nd Street and Water Street. The applicant is making slight modifications to this corner. If you have been by the site, you know currently this entire area is just an expanse of asphalt. So the applicant is extending the landscape island at the corner of the street intersection in order to define this access drive. This approach of Water Street cannot be made any narrower because it would not allow for trash trucks to make a movement to reach the dumpster and back out of the site. This particular circulation pattern was discussed very much in detail when we previously reviewed the site for the Brown Iron Brew House. And based upon the existing grades on the site and the ability for vehicles to move through, it was decided that keeping the dumpster and the loading unloading space in this area is the best design for the site at this time. The applicant is, however, improving the way the site is laid out by extending this island, eliminating one parking space over here, and adding additional landscaping at the corner, which provides for a more defined access and a better pedestrian circulation pattern that connects the sidewalk on East 2nd Street to the sidewalk on Water Street with a crosswalk across the main access drive itself. With regard to parking, this is an open air market. Our zoning ordinance does not have any specific standards for open markets, but it would be classified as an outdoor assembly use. That would be the use that is closest. And an outdoor assembly use typically requires one space for every 3 persons based on the occupancy load. The site plan notes that the occupancy load of the building along with the new addition is 360 persons. And at the last meeting, the architect had explained that the 360% occupancy load was determined based upon the plumbing capacity of the building. Now, this proposed building addition is going to be accommodating new men's and women's restrooms with multiple stalls in it. So the public facilities being provided are significantly greater than anything that ever exists in the current farmers parking lot itself, the farmers lot. As I previously mentioned, there is an existing dumpster over here. The gates are in a state of disrepair, and as part of the site plan, the DDA will be replacing the gates with new steel reinforced wooden gates. With regard to facade elevations, which is where most of the improvements on the site are, I shall go to. So if you see the colored rendering that the applicant has presented, the existing building is constructed of block and is going to be painted in shades of red and orange in keeping with the farmers market theme of the site itself. The proposed addition is going to be constructed almost entirely of brick, and some of the retaining walls that you see on the site, they are designed to be reclaimed brick, if I recollect correctly, based upon the notes that are on the plan itself. At the previous meeting, the Planning Commission had discussed in detail, this is going to be the stage on which performances take place. And the Planning Commission had discussed the fact that there are 2 garage doors. White garage doors are proposed for here instead of some other style door. And the DDA director had explained that the garage doors are necessary to facilitate moving equipment and set up for the farmers market in and out of the building. It's pretty difficult to move heavy equipment through just a man-sized door. So these doors are essential for the functioning of the site itself. The site plan does clarify that one garage door has been replaced with a regular door. At the time I did the review letter, I was not sure which door is being referenced because I still see the 2 garage doors. And the applicant clarified to me subsequently that that is an internal door that connects the stage addition to the existing building. However, I let the architect point that out specifically when they make their presentation. With regard to lighting, the site has got numerous light fixtures being proposed. These are in the parking lot and on the underside of the building, the stage, The building site is well lit. All of the fixtures are downward directed and shielded as required by our ordinance. At the time the site plan was reviewed, the applicant had missed including the photometric plan sheet in the site plan. After this letter was done, subsequently, the architect did send me the letter, and the photometric plan does comply with the ordinance standards. With regard to landscaping, the site is very well landscaped. This is the proposed site landscaping. The applicant is preserving an existing tree, which is a pretty big tree along East 2nd Street. Additional trees are being added, and low hedge of hydrangea and dogwood shrubs are being installed. These not only add color and appeal to the site, but it's a street corner, so they also maintain a low clearance, so it's not affecting line of sight around the corner. A significant bit of landscaping is being proposed for this connection area, which is right next to the stage and connecting to the main stage. The applicant has provided a close-up of the ramp and the landscaping details for this area. In addition to this, there are existing trees in this lot, the upper lot, and a few new trees are also going to be included. The bike rack that was previously discussed at the meeting is also going to be relocated to this area and will continue to service the site. With regard to signage, there is an existing monument sign that was previously used by the veterinary clinic. The DDA is just going to reuse the same monument sign by just resurfacing it, and that does meet the ordinance standards. Finally, with regard to the hours of operation, the farmers market is going to operate from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Saturdays from May to October. In November and December, the holiday farmers market will be conducted once or twice a week per the DDA. Now, special events that are held over here, as always, will require City Council approval, and the applicant has noted that any noise generated from the site or from any events taking place on the stage will comply with the city's noise ordinance. Based upon our review of the proposal at this time, it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant site plan and special exception approval to the proposed addition, construction of a stage to the existing site as presented on the site plan. I did want to make note that when the applicant previously appeared before you, they also proposed a sunshade on this site. The faint dashed line that you see over here, that represents the sunshade that was previously shown over here. The intent was to provide shade to vendors who would be out here during the farmers market events. However, that shade was placed at the property line, at a zero setback line, and as such would have required a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. On the revised plan, the applicant chose to eliminate the sunshade altogether. I just wanted to know that in the event, while we are always happy when sites comply with the zoning ordinance in its entirety without the need for any variances, in the event in the future the DDA deems the sunshade to be a necessity for either protection of the outdoor vendors or for the goods that are being presented over here, should they choose to put the sunshade back, I would recommend that the Planning Commission allow them to go directly to the Zoning Board of Appeals without having to come back before you for amended site plan approval, since you have seen before the sunshade that was previously proposed for the site. You had directed the applicant to come back with two options, one with the sunshade and the building setback variance, both of it, and the other compliant. The applicant chose to come back with only one option that is fully compliant with the ordinance. I just wanted to make note that in the future, if the sunshade should ever come into play, it should not cause a delay in the project, because it's my understanding this project is time sensitive. So in the event they do decide they need a sunshade, I would recommend you allow them to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals and seek approval rather than coming back to you for amended site plan approval. I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if this mic works or not, I'm not sure what that is, but. So we have a little miscommunication video. So the reason we came back with the second option was that's not what they want to do. They want to do the original option and seek the variance for the building also. So what I had suggested was come back with the original plan and this option and have Planning Commission approve both options. If they're not successful at the ZBA for the side yard setback, then they would have this approval, not have to come back this way. So it's the sunshade and the original building.
Okay.
So, and
So
we
we
had those
fall
plans, so fallback. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if I understand it correctly, Commissioners, this is fully compliant, and they're gonna have the building, because it was a 7-foot encroachment right over on Water Street, and then with the sunshade at the 0 elevation, so,
Correct.
okay. So I guess, before we go too much further, any questions for Vidya, commissioners? Mr.
Yes,
Gasson?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure I quite understand what Nick added to the conversation. We have a plan before us that's compliant and doesn't mention this variable shade.
So that's our mistake.
So how can
because
we approve that?
They submitted their plan, they asked for that to be approved. Video, at the commission, we suggested another option to make it compliant. They still want the other plan. That plan's already here. It was reviewed at the
So-
last meeting. Go ahead, Video. They
If
don't want
I
this
may
plan.
provide some clarification.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Gasson, when they came for a preliminary approval, they submitted a site plan that showed the need for variances. They were asked to come back with that plan and a new plan showing the elimination of variances. The packet that I got for review had only this plan that showed the elimination of the variances. I did not realize the applicant still had the original plan. Ideally, it should have been included in the packet as option A and option B. I was under the assumption option A was no longer being sought after, but it appears the applicant is still seeking the plan that they also presented at the preliminary hearing. So that is the reason for my review letter referencing only this, because this is the version that was submitted for the detailed site plan review before you tonight.
Follow,
Sir.
Mr. Chairman. So I understand, but I'm not sure how we can proceed with anything but what we have been given.
But you were given it already. It's just not in here, and it was reviewed the first time.
Right.
So
So the last meeting we were at.
just take the sheet and put it into this packet.
Okay.
Her and I talked about, so I don't know where the disconnect is. It's what they want, both. Maybe, I don't know if Micah put it in the packet or not, but it was the
No.
first set of plans that is no different.
No, I get it, and just so everyone is clear, it's that, it looks like home base, right? The darker yellow box,
It moves
sorry.
over, and staff's
Just a
gonna
lawyer.
recommend
Yes.
approval to the ZBA, right?
Right, it would be over more, a little bit more towards Water Street, and there was a 7-foot encroachment, correct?
Right, and I understand, Mr. Gaston, you were at the last meeting, so you didn't see that drawing, but it's in the packet. It was in the
Right.
packet originally.
No, I remember discussing it, for quite some time. Did you have a further question?
Yeah, I do, and I don't mean to get nitpicky on it, but
Oh.
I did see it in the last packet, although I was not at the meeting, but it's not being presented today for approval.
It is.
But, okay, so I think there's a distinction between, is it being presented versus is it tangibly in, like, a sheet that we can look at? You know what I'm saying? I guess I would ask the applicant.
That is the point.
I would ask the applicant then maybe to come up to the lectern and tell us what you're looking for, so we can make a decision as to. Your name, sir?
Good evening, Commissioners. Ben Giovanelli, Chairman of Rochester Downtown Development Authority. Thanks for having us before you again. Yeah, so last meeting, I'll refer to door number 1, door number 2, door number 3. We had the original plan, and there was some discussion, we had to go to public hearing, and then the city manager said, well, why don't you come back with one that totally meets the criteria, which is what we have here. So the intention was, our plan is still door number 1. We want to go with that one. The chair affectionately referred to it as home plate, and that's exactly what I thought. I'm like, oh, this looks like we're at Comarca Park.
Hang on, and
Sure,
the
go ahead.
packet online has the other one also. So
Okay, let me take
I'm
a-
not sure, maybe it didn't get to video, and I'm sorry, video, but it's in the view
Actually,
online.
Nick, it's not there on the online packet either, which is why the confusion was. This is the only plan. What is on your screen is the online packet that is posted on the city's website. But that said, I am fine if, provided the planning commission is okay with it. The only difference between the original plan option A and this is the proposed addition lining up with this end requiring a variance here and a 0-foot setback for the sunshade. Those were the two differences. But it's not there in the packet, was not submitted as part of this packet. So that's the only reason it got missed in my review.
Video, we'll text it to you. We're looking
Yeah.
at it online right
So-
now, so,
Vidya and,
it's
I'm more
right here.
concerned about
I'm looking at it, yeah.
And it's in the link that we got.
I was looking at the public hearing, and I just want to make sure that if there are people who were interested in coming to comment, that they got both packets too.
It's online.
And it,
It's
yeah.
in the packet, online.
So I just downloaded online that you go on the public website, And I'm looking at the one from last week where the two buildings line up.
Correct.
Okay, so as of 7/19, it's the one that I just downloaded off the city website, okay?
Well, we apologize for the confusion.
It's okay.
This is just, we were said, oh, this might be another approach, so that's what we wanted to do.
The goal is always being to make sure the public has every opportunity to
100%.
know what is going to be discussed, and furthermore, if it's approved, what's going to be approved. So I just want to make sure from a procedural standpoint, everyone is playing with the same deck of
100%.
cards.
Couldn't agree more, so.
Okay, so that being said, Mr. Giovanni.
Are we good?
Can you continue for just a
Yes,
second?
absolutely. So
Yeah.
once again, thanks for having us before you. So the plan the video just talked about was sort of, they revised. The original encroachment, for those that weren't here last meeting, you can kind of see where the building has been scooched to the west. Yeah, west, I'm sorry, I had to orient myself. Before, it was completely contiguous. The wall on the east side was straight. There's an existing nonconformance, it's 7 foot, we're in nonconformance against ourselves because we also own that property as well. But it was suggested to come back with a option number 3, which the commission said, well, why don't you take a look at what it might look like to put it in complete compliance? And that's what we have right here. And Steve Auger's here, the architect as well, so to the extent that I'm freestyling and I need to shut up, you can just tell me to move on. So we squeezed everything over. The square footage is roughly the same, other than being really goofy and taking up a good chunk of the, I call it like, kind of like the little square area where people would walk into the bathroom. It tightened that section up quite a bit, so it just, I mean, it's fine, it's in compliance. I know we're gonna get asked, well, why'd you guys move the building over like that? Because we didn't want to encroach on ourselves, apparently, so.
With respect to, and I appreciate the encroachment, you know, even though it is your own property, still.
Yeah, understood.
That's what it says. So the question I have, though, is the covered parking area. Okay, so that is not on
Right,
drawings that we have in front of us.
Right, we were asked to remove that, what
Correct.
that looked like. In the discussion that we had last meeting, it's, you know, go with what you presented, which is the one with the covered structure. The second one was with the building as it was, that we presented it, but with no structure, which this kind of does. And then door number 3 is getting rid of everything and making it totally compliant, which is what we just presented just now.
Okay. Is it still the DDA's intent to go to the zoning board of appeals for that covered parking area?
Yes.
Okay. And is that something that it would be, you know, consistent or concurrent with this process right now? Is there going to be a wait, or are you going to expedite that?
We're gonna follow whatever the process is.
Last Wednesday in August, they're scheduled to go for both items.
Okay. All right.
So the suggestion was to come up with this, and to the extent that the ZBA says, no, we've got an approval plan to keep moving forward, which is this option here.
Okay. So that being said, yes, Mr. Kenzie?
Yeah, in, I guess what's being called option number 1 or door number 1 that was presented at last meeting, the proposed addition had a different configuration. It had a much larger utility room
Right.
and a smaller restroom.
Yes, sir.
This one has just the opposite, it has larger restrooms and a little smaller utility room. Which option, or which configuration will door number 1 have?
The door number 1, so based on our discussion, I believe it was you had brought up the fact, the lack of bathrooms, we were gonna increase the number of stalls inside door
Okay.
number 1, or option number 1. So across the board, we'll be adding bathrooms, based on, you know, the discussion, I believe it was
Okay.
you.
It was.
That was a great idea, so I thought, oh yeah, for sure, we absolutely should do that. Once again, this is for the public's use, and we want to make sure it fits consistent with the theme of the area.
I'm good.
Okay. Ms. Clausen?
So just to confirm then, we don't really have a picture then of what you're actually pursuing, because it's the first one, with the variances,
picture.
right, with the shade and the sales.
Yeah.
But then it's with, to your point, the expanded bathrooms, the garage door you changed in Plan 2, so it's a combination of those.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Just the restrooms.
Just another stall in both of the restrooms.
Yeah.
And
Is
the-
the plan change?
Door was different, right? Or the garage door?
No, the garage doors stayed the same. The elevation garage doors stayed the same. The reference to the garage door in the write-up was there was a garage door separating the assembly room from the restrooms. and we decided to just go with man doors there for temperature control.
Thank you for the
Right, and I
clarification.
think also the discussion too, if I may finish, or add a little color to it. There was some discussion, I forget which commissioner, but about they didn't really care for the design of the door, so that's what I thought you were talking about
That's
as
what
well.
yes, that's
Yeah.
what I would know. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, you bet.
Commissioners, any other comments? Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
I just have a question for Nick. Have we ever on the planning commission done multiple?
Yes, so what we did at Riverfront Place, they had phase one, phase two. This phase one is the full-on plan, go to the zoning board if they don't get it. Phase two, option two would be this, so we did it there.
Thank you.
Okay, so, all right, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. So I guess, any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, so at 7:25, I'm going to open it up for public hearing. So if there's anyone who would like to come up and talk, please, the lectern is yours. No? Rose, is there anyone online?
There is no one online.
Okay, so at 7:26, I will close the public hearing portion and open up to commissioners' comments. None.
I have a few little questions, comments.
Sure, go right ahead.
For the, first of all, it's a really exciting project. I'm anxious to see it happen. The stage area, in a couple different areas, it talks about its elevation above the area around it by 3 feet or 3 feet 6. So I'm not really sure which it is, but my question would be, is there any safety railing required on that elevation offset from the stage down to the ground?
I believe the elevation change is 30 inches.
It's either 3 feet or 3 feet 6 according to the drawings. It says it both ways.
From,
Yeah. I will reference where, I saw it a couple different places, but the one I have available real easy is ASP.2. There's a section drawing that says 3 feet 6. And then there's a plan drawing that gives a stage elevation and a grade elevation, and it equals only 3 feet. So I'm not really concerned about the elevation. I'm just wondering, it's a public space. You're going to get a lot of people there after functioning hours with that elevation change. Is there a consideration for something after hours to guard against someone pushing a baby
We
in a
hadn't
stroller
discussed
off
that
or something?
with the DDA client, but that's certainly a good consideration to discuss. Whether we need that 36 inches or go to 30 inches, which is, code compliant without a guardrail, so. And the whole security issue of how we're going to keep kids out of there and that kind of stuff, we really haven't got into that level of detail as of yet.
I guess,
The code requires 42 inches or lower, no handrail, 42 inches or higher, a handrail is required.
so it's at 42, just, I guess to that point, it's 42 right now, according to that one drawing.
But you're concerned with just general public safety when not
things-
necessarily an act, but people sitting up there and having an ice cream.
Goofing around,
Right,
kids, or,
yeah.
because you're not always going to be there kind of
Right. Point well taken.
controlling the place. So that's one thing, and in the same sheet, actually, right below that, a minor thing, there's a parking sign for your barrier-free parking spaces, and it indicates 5 feet clear to the bottom, which I think needs to be more like 6'8" for clearance, so someone blind perhaps doesn't run into it. I think that's just a change that you need to take care of. And then in walking path, and I'm not sure if this really applies because it's an existing, but I'll bring it up anyway, the surface lot, and I'm guessing it's outside of the property, but it's a junction to this property. The walk to the south is indicated at 5 feet, and the parking spots go right up to that sidewalk without a wheel stop. So I'm guessing that the bumper is gonna create a lesser walking path than 5 feet. And I mention it because on the opposite side, on the east side, you do show wheel stops. And it may have just been you didn't show wheel stops on the other locations.
Yeah, we'll have to take that into consideration with our civil engineer.
Yeah, I think that would, I don't know how, if that path gets traveled a lot, but it's talking about existing stairs and a walkway, so I'd appreciate that being,
Yeah, the walkway would have to be 7 feet in order to be compliant.
yeah, I think so. Those are my comments, but I'm excited about the project. Looks like it would be really a good thing for the city.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gaston, thank you. Gentlemen, Mr. Lord, Mr. Kenzik, no? Anything on this side? Okay. All right, so from a procedural standpoint, Mr. Bandon, and maybe even Mr. Kret, if you don't mind giving me a little bit of guidance here. So the issue before the Planning Commission this evening is to approve the proposal from the DDA as it pertains to this. But again, a little bit of a nuance here is we've got maybe option A and option B, correct? And so just to be very, very clear, option A would be the original plan. When I say original plan, the plan that has the 7-foot variance, or encroachment, I should say, and then obviously with the covered parking area that you would then go to ZBA. That would be option A. And then option B would be the plan that was up on the large screen there that has the building set over so there's no encroachment, and then a total removal of the covered parking, right? And just to be clear, for anyone in the public, anyone who's watching online, those drawings, both those drawings are available on the city website, and I'm looking at them right now, and I can attest that I just downloaded them about 20 minutes ago when the meeting started. So they are there if there's questions or comments. But that being said, did I say it correctly as what is before the commission this evening?
I believe so, but I would also put a condition of either, I think you have to make that walk 7 feet wide or have wheel chocks. You can't narrow the sidewalk down less than 5 feet. So,
Okay.
that could be a condition on both plans, the way it's drawn.
Sure. So all walkways would require to be compliant with city code?
Right, and then I think this, to Mr. Gaston's second point, if the code requires a railing, I know decks are 30 inches, but Chief C knows that code better than anybody, so, if it was code required a railing, either they drop the whole thing down to 30 inches, or, Chief, are you confident it's 42?
I just looked it up.
Okay, there's your answer then.
Okay.
I take back what I said.
Mr. Gasson, is that okay with
It's
you?
totally fine. I just, again, my point was not a code thing, it was more a
Yeah, I thought
safety
that.
thing.
Sure.
So operationally, I would even put some kind of language into a motion that the operators come up with a plan for safety cautions.
Mr. Kenzik?
I'm not sure your description was accurate. I've not looked online, I just looked at the drawings that were presented, but I think your description for option A also needs to include the revised configuration for the proposed addition.
The adding of the 2 stalls.
Oh, and the 2 stalls, I'm sorry. Okay, for the bathrooms, okay. All right.
Chairman Hauser?
Yes, please.
If it might help the planning commission when you're making your motion, I pulled up the review letter from the preliminary hearing. You can refer to option A as a site plan dated June 10th, and option B is site plan dated July 24th.
Good idea.
Okay, thank you.
That way you'll have a clear record of both options.
Okay, so to be clear, the issues before the commission are approval of option A, which is the site plan dated June 10th, 2024, or option B, which is the site plan dated July 24th, 2024. And then obviously with the caveats that were discussed in Mr. Banda's comments about making sure that any and all drawings, guardrails would be compliant with code, as well as making certain that the width of any walkway was no less than 7 feet.
And
Okay.
adding the 2 stalls.
It's actually 5 foot clear, but now.
5 foot, I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry,
Mr.
through the
Giamatti.
chair, and adding the 2 stalls. in the
And
bathroom.
adding the 2 stalls, yep, plus 2 stalls. And that would be for options A and B, correct?
Well,
Okay.
it's already in B. It would
It's already in
be
B, so it would be an
adding
option
to
A.
So
Okay.
once again, I apologize for the confusion. The whole idea is that the ZBA is going to say yes or no, so to the extent that say no, then we were able to continue marching forward. Otherwise, we kind of come back before you again. So we're trying to be respectful of your time.
I'm very sensitive to all the moving parts in this
100%.
process.
Thank you,
You know,
sir.
considering this was, I think, commenced in February. It's moving at lightning speed, so it's okay to take a break for just a moment and double check. and
100%.
Do the math. So, okay, commissioners, that is before us, and so I will sit, and if there's a motion, we can discuss it, and then move on to the next thing. Mr. Gasson.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, we approve the plan as submitted July 24th, as considered option B, with the 2 stalls as indicated. Likewise, the plan of June 10th, option A, would also include the 2 stalls, and that either one that gets implemented would include the 5-foot clear walkway, correction to the sign height for ADA clearances, and have some kind of consideration for safety on the open elevation change.
You got it. Okay. Motion by Mr. Gasson. Is there support?
Support.
I'm sorry, who's that? Mr.
Support,
Kinzig.
yes.
Okay. Discussion among the commissioners. Okay, roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you,
You're welcome.
Commissioners. We
Thanks for
appreciate
coming.
your patience with us, and
Best of luck to you, okay? Now, Mr. Bandit, does that go to city council then?
Nope.
It doesn't. Okay, so
ZBA next. if they
ZBA for the
choose.
covered parking and the encroachment issue, and that's it. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Moving along, line item 6B, another public hearing, notice of public hearing, consideration of an amendment to the city's zoning ordinance, section 800 RM-1, multiple family residential district, the intent section. Mr. City Attorney, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So today before you is the public hearing. I'll give it a quick intro. As you all recall, there was this change was brought to light during the rezoning issue for the 709 Woodward property. There was a concern, this has nothing to do with that project, other than it was a means to let us know that at least one member of the public had an issue with what it meant. This, when I say it's section 800, which is the intent paragraph for the RM1 multiple family residential district. There's one line at the last line of that section A. Had some confusing language about applying an RM2 standard for RM1. Staff and administration, we don't know why that would be put in there, but if at least one member of the public had a confusion on it and we saw that it served no purpose, we thought it would be wise, and City Council thought the same, to send it to Planning Commission to strike out that language. So at your July meeting, Planning Commission considered a zoning ordinance amendment. The only change is to remove that second sentence. And so as procedure goes, if Planning Commission moves us forward, the proper procedure would be to open the public hearing, close the public hearing if the Planning Commission wishes to proceed. Then it goes to City Council, since it's a Planning Commission or planning or zoning code. That's why it's here first. For this action, and that would be kicked up to City Council for its consideration and action if it decides to move forward. So that, if I'm here for any questions, if you have any.
Okay, commissioners, any questions for the city attorney on this particular issue? Okay, it being 7:38 p.m., I will open the floor for a public hearing. Anyone from the public who would like to come up to the lectern and raise any issues or concerns about this particular modification to the zoning ordinance? Rose, anyone online?
No one online.
Okay, I will close the hearing at 7:38 and discussion amongst the commissioners. Ms. Clausen.
On the agenda, we have upcoming review of proposed new RM1 and RM2 zoning classifications. Why not wait for that process? Why do this line item now, this change?
Mr. City Attorney.
Happy to give my thought on it, which is, this is a small direct change to the code. And what you're going to see, like you point out correctly, is going to be a part of a larger process with all the zoning districts that may spend several months in process of having public hearings here, go up to City Council, having all the public hearings here. Probably, I think there's going to be a workshop if I'm not mistaken. So this would be, there's no reason you couldn't wait other than do you need to? Because you're right, it's gonna be at some point addressed, at planning commission and city council. It's a timing issue. Do you wanna move it forward now, or not? So, there's no reason you can't wait, other than timing for a particular purpose, for a particular need, or desire, I should say.
Yeah, I would just kind of turn that around of like, it's been in there since 2014, so why? You know, you said we could wait, but I guess why now do we have to take action? Same thing, yeah, so I guess my comments are gonna be the same as they were last meeting, is like, as it's shown, I don't have any concerns with taking it out, but if you look at the master plan and the process we're about to embark on in rezoning, or looking at I just don't see the point in maybe taking one sentence out now. But those are my comments.
That's duly noted.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, you
Yeah, and I said the same thing last time as well. I think it probably should go, but I see no point in just taking one spot when we're gonna be reviewing it all anyway.
what would the time, I obviously know that we're going to discuss it, we have discussed it, but if you could give us a little bit of a timeline as to when you think this would go on, maybe we could have that conversation.
So if this wasn't such a horrendous agenda, we were gonna put them for first, to introduce it to you folks tonight, so it'll definitely be at the next meeting. I think we're gonna ask if we can have a couple of months after the summer, so September, October, we can have dual meetings so we can get at this
Right.
again. So at the latest, it would be here at your August meeting or the second meeting in September, if we have it. So again,
No, I get it. I understand, because I know we started it before and it kind of, fits and, all that, but, Commissioners, any other questions? Any comments? No. Okay, so I guess the idea is if there was motivation and a motion on behalf of any commissioner, we could do it. Otherwise, we would take a pass and we'll wait until next time.
So there's no objection from anybody that I'm hearing on this. It's really just, do we do it now or do it later? Is that really what?
That's what I understand it to be. It's just a timing/sequencing issue.
Okay. Well, it seems to me it's gotten this far. We're staring at it right now. I might as well keep moving it along.
In what sense? Move it along to make a motion or move it along to wait until?
Move it along to make a motion.
Okay.
you should open the public hearing first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No, I did.
Oh,
I did
I'm
it,
sorry.
yeah. I was like, wait a
I'm out of it
second.
too, I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. That's all
Yeah,
right.
tough enough job, though.
Just to be clear, the public hearing was opened, it was closed, there was no one there, so discussion, and now, again, just if there's a motion, I'm free to hear it.
Yeah, so I'm clear. This is a motion to move it on to city council.
Yes,
So moved.
okay.
Support.
Okay, support from Mr. Gasson, you got you first, okay. Any discussion? Mr. Peckins, roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
No.
Clauser,
No.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Stone,
Yes.
Lloyd.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Bannon, to be clear, that will go to city council.
Correct.
And will it go to city council this month, or will it have to go in September?
It's to set the public hearing, so we could literally put it on the next meeting. The mayor sets the agenda, so we could talk about that. And if we want to keep it going, we could ask to set it at the August 12th meeting. Then it would have to go to the September meeting because we need more than 15 days. So it would be the first meeting in September, council would take formal action.
Okay, wonderful. All right, thank you. All right, line item 6C, notice of public hearing. 239/269 South Street. This is site plan request for the construction of 2 new light industrial buildings. Vidya, the
Yes.
floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The request before you tonight, I will share the site plan. So we've conducted a review of a request from Kemp Brothers Investment to construct 2 speculative industrial buildings with a combined area of about 19,293 square feet. These are 2 parcels of land, both of which will be combined by the applicant subsequent to site plan approval. The combined area of the 2 parcels is 1.47 acres. It is located on the north side of South Street in the I-2 Industrial 2 district. Now, the applicant appeared before you on June 3rd for a preliminary hearing and was scheduled for public hearing at this meeting. At the meeting, there were many aspects of this project that were discussed by the Planning Commission. We did not receive a revised plan subsequent to the preliminary review, so we have reviewed the plans that were previously submitted in detail and presented our findings in this letter. The proposed use of the building, which is light industrial, it's a principal permitted use in the I2 district. At this time, these are speculative buildings, which means the applicant does not know who the users might be, so they will have different tenants in the various units. These are likely going to be small industrial users because there are multiple tenant spaces in each one of these two buildings. There is an existing detached accessory buildings that is located up on the north end of the site. The applicant is proposing to retain this. This building is located within the 100-year floodplain. It is a non-conforming structure, and the proposed use is just storage and warehousing. So the building is going to be retained as is. One of the questions that was asked at the preliminary hearing by the Planning Commission was this 12-foot wide private easement that is shown halfway across the property. The Planning Commission wanted to know exactly what this easement is and if it is going to be impacted by the proposed building being placed on top of it. We have not received any information in this regard, so we do not know what exactly that easement is or if there is going to be any consequences to building on the site on top of the easement, or does the easement need to be abandoned. The applicant will be able to answer that more hopefully. With regard to setbacks, the proposed two buildings comply with all of the required setbacks for the I2 district. The ordinance also has a requirement that no buildings can be placed in a 30-foot setback from the river, which is called as a landscape stabilization zone. No structures, buildings, or any parking areas are permitted within the landscape stabilization zone. If you see on the site plan where my cursor is, that is the line. The existing building, as I previously mentioned, is located within this area, but it is a legal non-conforming structure. In order to provide access to this building, the applicant had to provide some means of reaching the building. So they are creating an area with grass pavers. This is a specific material that is not impervious. It is a pervious surface. It's not like a traditional parking lot. So these grass pavers are a pervious surface. They're a specific engineered item, but that is subject to review and approval by the city's engineer to make sure that it actually meets the requirements for what is permitted in the landscape stabilization zone. With regard to vehicle access, there is a single 24-foot wide access drive that provides access to the site in and out. We had previously asked for a truck circulation diagram for the site. The reason why truck circulation is important for the site is that South Street is only one lane in each direction. So any trucks that are coming in and out of the site will have an impact on the abutting roadway. Now, the truck circulation diagram that the applicant provided basically shows us trucks driving through the site and turning and coming back out. However, if you look at the elevations, each of these units has overhead doors in the area that are cross-hatched. These are the loading areas. So we had asked for a turning diagram to explain how trucks would back up to these units, or how would they access these units if they are larger semi-trucks or semi-trailers. The applicant had explained at the preliminary hearing that a building such as these with tenant spaces typically do not receive semi-trucks or larger trucks. The Planning Commission had noted that truck parking will be a problem, because if a larger truck accesses the site and they are unable to make the turn movements, their only option will be to park in the main drive aisle while they do loading, unloading activity. While that might work for the site, it is going to prevent any vehicles from getting through, in or out of the site if such activity is going to take place. So the circulation issue needs to be addressed to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission. If the applicant can explain how the circulation on the site would work and the Planning Commission is satisfied that the truck circulation plan that the applicant is proposing for the site is something that you believe is functional, you can approve the plan, but at this time, we still have concerns with regard to that. With regard to pedestrian access, there is an existing sidewalk along the site's frontage, and the gaps are going to be filled in by the applicant. Parking for the site is based on manufacturing rate of 1 space per 800 square feet of gross floor area, which the site has more than adequate parking. Should the site be used for warehousing, the parking requirement will fall further. So the site is adequately parked, and they do have the required number of handicap accessible spaces. There is a single trash enclosure unit shown on the northeast corner of this building, which is intended to serve the entire site. We did clarify to the applicant that no, even though it is an industrial site, no outdoor storage or sales of any kind is permitted on the site because it's not shown on the site plan. Any outdoor storage on this site will impact its circulation, and the applicant has noted on the site plan that no outdoor storage of any equipment or supplies is proposed at this time. With regard to lighting, the plan has proposed wall-mounted lighting, and we will go to the building elevations so you can actually see what the elevations look like. If you look at the site plan, the plan does propose wall-mounted light fixtures on the facades of the building that are facing each other. There aren't enough fixtures on the west side of one building and on the east side of one building. There is an existing light pole along the site's South Street frontage, but it is not clear if the illumination level that is currently shown at that entrance is adequate, because the photometric plan that the applicant has submitted shows the illumination level at 0.1 to 0.2 foot candles, which is very, very low level of illumination, especially if that is the one and only entrance for emergency vehicles, trucks, and people who work on the site. If that's the only level of lighting on there, it is well below ordinance standards and it needs to be improved. If the illumination level is not adequate, we would recommend that the applicant install one light pole within their site at the main access drive, so the access drive is clearly visible, especially after it gets dark. With regard to architecture, the proposed buildings are going to be predominantly constructed of ribbed metal panel, and there is a foundation based of burnished concrete block. The city's master plan looks at this as a future growth area for research and technology-based uses, and we had previously recommended that additional masonry be incorporated into the building facades, especially the west elevation and the east elevation of the other buildings, which are long blank wall facades. At your previous meeting, the applicant during their presentation had presented colored renderings of the building, which the Planning Commission had received well. However, those colored elevations have not been submitted as part of the official packet, and we haven't had an opportunity to review them, so we cannot provide any comment on the architecture at this time. The architectural elevations we have before you are the ones that were included in your preliminary package too. With regard to landscape plan, the applicant has submitted a very detailed and extensive landscape plan. The site is very well landscaped. They are providing significant number of trees along the east and west property lines, along the site's frontage and along the riverfront itself. In addition to that, there is attractive foundation landscaping being proposed. So this is one of the best landscape plans we have seen. Commissioner Kenjic had previously remarked about concerns with regard to overcrowding of trees along the east property line. The applicant has provided adequate trees to meet their landscaping requirements and also their tree replacement requirements. So I would recommend that when the trees are being planted, the applicant follow the specifications for spacing of the trees as recommended by their landscape architect or by their landscaping company to ensure the viability of the trees itself. No signage is proposed at this time for the site. The site will require full engineering approval from the city's engineer once it is approved. And finally, the sustainability evaluation. Every new project on a site that is built goes through the city's sustainability evaluation proposal. It's not just the special projects. In fact, on South Street, when the Revolved warehouse was built, they too had to go through the sustainability evaluation process, because that worksheet is intended as a tool to help guide the Planning Commission and the City Council when you review plans to get the optimal design. Now, we did provide the applicant with a copy of the sustainability worksheet and a sample example for how the worksheet is filled out, along with the explanation that needs to be provided for each of the indicators, so we know if the applicant's project is scoring a point for a particular indicator or not. However, the worksheet that we received has got minimal information. It has got points awarded for a few indicators with no explanation as to how those points were arrived at. And for other indicators where we believe the site can in fact score points, there is no information. I did make an attempt to try and find as much information as I could to fill out the sustainability worksheet, but at a point, the information has to come from the applicant because I do not have access to the information that the applicant will have for their site. So I was unable to complete a sustainability evaluation of the site, and as such, there is no sustainability score that I could provide. My evaluation worksheet is included in your packet with my comments on it. So at this time, the project is before the Planning Commission for your review and consideration. As I previously mentioned, the applicant chose to go with the plan that they submitted for your preliminary consideration. No revisions were made since your preliminary review, and the applicant wanted the same plan presented before you for action tonight. So I defer to the Planning Commission. If you feel the plan that is submitted before you tonight meets all of the requirements, concerns with regard to circulation, lighting, architecture, and other aspects, you could choose to go ahead and grant approval to the plan as presented, or approve it with conditions, or provide feedback and ask for the applicant to come back with a revised plan. So I would be happy to answer any questions for you. Thank you.
Vidya, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Vidya? Mr. Lord.
So these are multi-tenant buildings. Is there intent to own and just rent these spaces out, these units out, or are they going to have unique addresses and ownership? How's that getting done?
Yes.
Would that be for the
We'll have to ask.
Okay.
applicant? Yeah.
Okay.
The applicant's here, correct?
Yes.
Okay, we'll just wait a second.
And
Yes, go ahead, please.
Just one other, there was a note on the detention that a variance shall be sought for on-site detention. I may have missed that. Did you discuss that already?
Yes, that is something the city's engineer will have to review. I believe the applicant is seeking a variance for stormwater detention volumes. That is something that Nick can probably shed more light on because I do not review the engineering aspect of the project.
Mr. Banda.
Yes, in that case, so the county requires a 100-year storm. In this case, they're requesting a 10-year storm that needs a waiver. So we've done it before, we did it on the elevator site, but, so the nuance of all of this in our process is a little bit frustrating. So Vidya does an amazing job of identifying all the ordinance requirements. We take that report, we sit down with the developer. They have two choices. They can take her suggestions or know that they have to come in front of this commission, and you all are able to hear them out. He needs to explain every reason he didn't do what they asked to do. And I had a personal meeting with Mr. Kemp, sat him down and said, you're gonna go clean or you're gonna go in and fight for everything that you don't agree with on her letter. So that's where we are tonight. So he can back his own thing. Why he didn't do the things that were in the letter, I can't make him do that, right? We can't make him. All we can do is suggest it, but the power is, or the authority is with the commission. If you don't like his answer to those, or then he has the right to try to convince you differently than her report.
And I appreciate that, and I recognize every project is different and every situation is different. My only concern is I don't want an adverse inference to be implied because someone didn't submit a revised drawing or something like that. So, yeah, we'll have the developer come up and talk, but before that, any other questions? Yeah, so let's, Mr. Lord, go ahead, please.
But just so I'm clear then on this, it's called a variance on the plan. Is it an engineering waiver? It's not a ZBA?
Correct.
Or some condition that we have to apply? Okay.
They have to get a clearance from the county.
Okay. Mr. Gasson.
I have a question on the truck circulation, I guess it is. And the questions to Vidya, is there a requirement to show geometrics on turning ability when a dead end exceeds some length? And I've seen this before, and I know we've seen it on plans before for fire trucks, particularly as recently on the forest department. So we saw that illustrated. But I'm guessing there must be some kind of dead end limitation. And I mean, that's my question. Is there a limitation of a dead end?
In our zoning ordinance, we do not have the dead end limitation, and I believe fire chief is satisfied with the turn radius provided within the site for the ability for a fire truck to turn around and come out of the site. So I believe it does meet fire chief's requirements. And the turn diagram that is on your screen, that does show a box truck or a trash truck being able to make turn movements through the site and come out. I believe at the last meeting, Commissioner Gasson, you or another commissioner raised the question of whether it was possible to provide a secondary connection on the northeast corner of the site. I believe that was discussed, but it was just something you had suggested the applicant look into if it's a possibility, just to provide a secondary means of ingress and egress from the site.
Thank you. If the chief is satisfied, then I guess I don't need to know any more than that.
Yes.
Any questions on this side? Any comments for video? No? Okay, is the applicant here?
Yes.
If you don't mind, please come to the lectern, name and address, and we'll go from there.
Tom Kemp, 275 West Gerard, Madison Heights. Yeah, our project, we want to build a couple of multi-tenant industrial buildings. They're in Rochester. I grew up in Rochester. When we get these projects up, we will own almost 17% of the buildings on South Street. So I have a very vested interest in it being a great area, a thriving area for the community. Lots of the buildings on South Street have a very similar maneuvering in their driveways, to get in and out of the multi-tenant spaces. Quite a few multi-tenant spaces on South Street.
Do you anticipate a regular frequency of large semi-trucks coming onto the site for delivery?
We do not. We do not. And the other facilities we own down there don't have a heavy frequency of semis. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but
Sure.
it's not going to be holding up traffic while trucks are backing in there.
That's, I think, maybe my personal concern is they would pull onto the site and you'd have to deal with it yourself once they get on your property, but it's not going to block the South Street, correct?
Absolutely, correct. And we are going to own it. It's not a condo. It's not something we're offering up to sell off units on that space, to answer that question. The easement that's on there is tied to DTE, and it was to service the home that is still on there, and that's why it doesn't go all the way through the site. There is actually a line that continues on, and we've already had communication with DTE, and we've got pending approval, we've opened a work order to talk about how we still have to pay for service into the new building. So all of that will be reworked, and there will be new easements for DTE through the property eventually.
Okay.
How about lighting, the lighting situation?
Yes, so, can you expand?
Yeah,
on
lighting, if the planning commission thinks we need to put a light out by our entrance, we will. But if you drive down South Street, I think we'll be a unique building down there with a light out by our drive approach.
For the lighting, is that something that they would work with the city for eventually? No, so that would all be part of this proposal, correct? Okay. Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Gasson?
I have one more. Just a comment maybe to start off with. Thank you for the clarification on that easement. That was one of my concerns, or at least a question. I knew it would get resolved. Just wanted to know how. The other was the architecture, and I think I expressed this last time I saw it, looking at the pure and simple elevations, as video mentioned a couple times, the east and west, the outside exposure of the buildings was underwhelming, I guess is a good way to put it. But it was shown, I mean, in your illustration you have there, but also your landscape plan shows a pretty good, I mean, a really good masking of that building with the natural parts of the tree. So that was satisfied in my mind. The other thing, and I mentioned this last time too, is the barrier-free parking. And on your plan, you submitted this time the same kind of thing. You show a parking sign, like no parking in your package, but you don't say anything about barrier-free parking that's indicated on the ground, but there's always a vertical sign. And my question earlier was, is it on the building or is it on the sidewalk? Because when the sidewalk is pinched between a building and a parking spot, if the sign goes in the parking space, the tail end of the car always sticks out. So I really want to know where the sign's going to go.
Well, we can do either or. We haven't gotten into that detail of the site plan yet, and engineering historically picks that kind of stuff up for us also, but we understand the concern and know that we wouldn't be able to hang a car over.
So I would like a commitment that it's going to be on the opposite side of the sidewalk from the parking stall.
It'll be on the opposite side, for the record, it'll be on the opposite
Thank you.
side of the sidewalk.
I think that works better for everybody.
I guess I'd like to point out that the east and west sides of those buildings, on the west elevation, we back up to another industrial building that looks exactly, just lower and older. The elevation is exactly the same, and we're planting a bunch of trees along through that. You know, we're as close as we could get to back to back, I guess, and then and they have, you know, there's no, it's a little grass strip back there, and now we'll have some trees and things, so it should look nicer.
Yeah, just a comment if I may.
Absolutely.
I appreciate the trees. I think it does the trick. I mean, the idea that it's kind of like the other building, we're looking for developers to raise the bar, not just match what's there, kind of thing, but I think you have with the trees, so I appreciate that.
Commissioners, any other comments? Tom, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I'm going to open up the floor. It's 8:06 PM, and at this time, I will open up the public hearing to discuss any issues or comments about this particular project. Rose, is there anyone online?
No one's online.
Okay. At 8:06, I will close the public hearing and then open up for commissioners. Any discussion? Mr. Stone?
Just, this is the first time I was seeing the plan. What is the existing building to remain? What, is that the house you spoke of with DT service?
Come up to the lectern, please. Yep.
No, it's an existing block structure, so it is a small industrial type space that, you know, is structurally sound. It's one of the reasons we purchased it.
It's like a garage almost?
It's a garage.
Yeah.
It is.
So you're gonna keep it and it's gonna be part of one of the units, or it'll be?
It's gonna be freestanding, and it'll be improved to match the look of the new buildings.
Do you have a rendering of what that looks like?
No, but it'll look like that. It'll look like those ones right there. It's a concrete block. It's got concrete dock plank roof on it. It's a real structure.
You'd have to make a condition of those materials matching the building, because he did not submit that.
Yeah, I mean, just slap up red paint and go, it matches, I told you, so.
Meaning that.
Well, we would have more masonry then, which I thought there was a recommendation. No, we intend to make it look, it's gonna be this complex will be one of the nicest ones on South Street.
If I heard, I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. If I heard you correctly, it'll have the same exterior finish.
Correct.
That structure, the auxiliary structure as these two buildings here.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments or discussions amongst ourselves? Okay, thank you, sir. So if there is a motion to support the site plan, I will certainly entertain one.
Is there a public hearing for this?
I already did it. Yeah.
Fast.
See,
I caught that one.
people are jumping up here, yes.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman,
Okay, motion by Mr. Gasson, go ahead.
that we approve the plan as submitted with condition on a satisfactory sustainability submittal to our planner and administration. And if there's any questions to it, that it comes back to Planning Commission prior to proceeding with the approval that we might give tonight. And that as,
Handicap sign, then the building materials on the auxiliary building would match.
yes, thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
And how about lighting? Do we feel like we would want to light at the entrance, or? It's not, it's good for safety, it's not, there are no other ones out there.
There's no other ones.
He's right.
Yeah, so,
But again, we're trying to raise the bar, I agree with that.
And it was a recommendation of the planner, so I would say yes. Add that into the
Sure.
conditions.
okay, so just to be clear, there's a motion to approve, subject to the sustainability coming back before the planning commission. If there's any questions, we would discuss it. Number 2 is the handicap location. Number 3 is the auxiliary structure would be consistent with the materials and look and style of the 2 structures there. And then 4th was
Lighting.
lighting. Yep.
Does it need to come back to us?
It wouldn't, if the sustainability index can be completed and Vidya signs off on it, I would think that would be the condition. If she doesn't, then he would have to come back and argue with the planning commission.
That would be my.
Is that fair, Vidya?
That's my intention.
I believe the applicant can do the sustainability evaluation adequately, so they don't need to come back before you. The reason I still recommend it is not to be nitpicky, but I just want to make sure that the applicant follows the process that every other project has. That's the only reason I want to make sure. I'm sure I can work with Mr. Kemp to try and get that in properly. If I may only request that you add to your motion that the colored rendering that was shown to the planning commission be actually submitted in paper copy for our files, because we do not have it in our files, the rendering that was shown of the building.
Mr. Kemp, can you or Mr. Hurst do that for us, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And we tried to do that sustainability. We came in and talked to Nick about it. We were struggling with it.
He'll help you out again, all right? Set up a meeting. All right. Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Gaston, subject to the conditions that were stated on the record. Is there support? Support. Mr. Stone supports. Okay, discussion amongst the commissioners? Mr. Peckins, roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kemp, thank you very much. Thank you. Don't forget your rendering, please. Okay. Have a very nice day.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Line item number 7, consideration. This is consideration of 114 East 4th Street. Request for modification of a previously approved site plan to adjust payment in lieu of parking requirements, and this is a request to set a public
Mr.
hearing.
Chairman,
I'm sorry.
D, we need to go to one more public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry. Notice the public hearing, 307 South Main Street. This is a request for payment in lieu of parking. The proposed project for this space is a new business called Novel Bookstore. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, thank you. At our last meeting, we met the owners, I think they're here again, there they are, of our novel bookstore. They've been moving forward the process, just approved both their signs today. We set the public hearing for this evening for a pay in lieu of 1 spot, just so that we're compliant with required parking for the conversion from the Tallulah Bell retail store to the sandwich shop. It needed 1 extra parking space, so they've agreed to that. They would have to pay that in full prior to the issuance of a C of O.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, it is 8:13. I will open up the public comment. Anyone who would like to make a comment concerning the payment in lieu of parking for the new bookstore at 307 South Main Street, please, the lectern is yours. Rose, anyone online?
No one's online.
All right, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:13. Commissioners, any comments? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the payment in lieu.
Okay, support?
Support.
Mr. Gasson, discussion? Mr. Peckins, the roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, and the applicants are here?
There you go.
When are you guys expected to open? Please come up for just a moment, please, and state your name on the record. I want everyone to hear what your business is.
Hi, I'm Elliot May, and this is my wife, Rachel. We're expected to open in October. We just started construction last week, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, listen, best of luck to you, and congratulations on your endeavor, and if you need anything, there's a city manager right there. He'd be more than happy to help you out.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a very good evening, okay? Thank you. Okay, let's go back to line item number 7, consideration. This is consideration of 114 East 4th Street. This is a request for modification of a previously approved site plan to adjust payment in lieu of parking requirements. This is a request to set for public hearing. Mr. Banda.
So it's going to Mr., this is the most confusing thing you're ever gonna hear, so have patience. Jeff, we figured this out. The line to get across the finish line is very confusing, but I'll turn it over to Mr. Crott.
Yes, thank you, I think. So, before you is an item, Boss Barber is, at 114 East 4th Street. Normally, I don't put a 2.5-page memo in here, but I was hoping it was gonna be helpful to read before tonight. So, Boss Barber received, approval back some years ago. At the time, they needed to have 7 parking spots, they needed to account for. There's 3 ways to account for parking spots in the city. One is to have them on site, one is to have them within 300 feet in another site, and another one is to have a pay in lieu, as you just approved for the bookstore. So Boss Barber went to Planning Commission and received approval for payment in lieu. At the time, it was $7,500 a space, and so they had to have 7, so my math is $52,500. City Council also allowed an applicant to seek a payment plan for certain levels. So for 10 payments is what that would be. So Boss Barber went to City Council, got approval, and there's currently an installment agreement in place. Boss Barber has paid, I believe it's half of that, their requirement to do that. So if they had other options, they couldn't do anything on site, and they are leasing that property, they don't own it, but there's no spots on site. So there's 2 ways they could have done it. They did the pay in lieu at 7 spaces. Fast forward to recently. So recently, the owners bought a parking lot parcel within 300 feet and said, hey, we want to be able to not pay anymore towards the pay in lieu, and we want to satisfy the rest of our parking spaces with a lot within 300 feet. So if they had owned that property back some years ago, we wouldn't be here today because they could have satisfied it all. But so really, it's kind of, we had to do a lot of mental gymnastics, thank you, Olympics term. And so what we've put forward and what we thought and talked to their legal counsel, who I just saw in the back, Mr. Rentrop. So we kind of noodled this as to how this could happen, right? So they're essentially paid for 3.5 spots, rounding up 4. Okay, so the idea, what they're seeking today is to amend the site plan. No facade changes, no changes other than the notes on the site plan, which said how they're gonna meet their 7 spots, their requirements. So what they would like to do is to satisfy their 7 required spots by having 4 spots covered by parking, the pay in lieu parking, which will say that they've already, the equivalent has been paid for. And to have the other 3 spots satisfied with this other lot within 300 feet. So in order to do that, because it's a site plan issue, they have to come to City Planning Commission, and this will be one of their stops. Because they have the payment in lieu agreement, installment agreement, they have to go to City Council to say, can you please just end the agreement, give us the credit for 4, Planning Commission allowed us to do the 3 at the other lot, and we're done. So administration and I are in support of that concept, and so that's why it's here today, only because it's a site plan issue and a special exception, which is special exception allows them to satisfy it with pay in lieu. So before you, they can present if I've missed anything, but I think that's the plan forward since it's a site plan. It is set for a consideration today. Site plans require public hearings, so the request today would be to, if Planning Commission is satisfied, to set it for a public hearing for the site plan change. The change only being how they satisfy their 7 parking spots. A little shorter than my memo, but hopefully that adds some clarity.
Just a really quick question for my own edification. This is back, if my history is correct, when parking in lieu was $7,500 a spot, right? Now it's
Correct.
1,000?
Correct.
And so that's why it was 52.5, right?
That's
And they've
correct.
already paid 250.
That's correct.
Right? Okay.
And they did go to city council to ask, can they reduce the 7,500 to 1,000? And we clearly, when we wrote that ordinance, we knew that could happen. And city council denied that, saying, we actually wrote in the ordinance, no look back, so.
No retroactive.
But they did try, which they had the right to do that, so.
And I would add to that, there's no refund, there's no this, and not that it matters because they're not trying to undo anything, but it used to be the parking spots were 15,000. So it was 15,000, then it was, or,
It was 12.
I'm sorry, 12,000,
7,500.
and then it was 7,500, and now it's down to, 1,000. So they were kind of the middle price, at that point. So there's no refunds, and they know that. It's just a matter of, can we stop paying on the 7 because we have the alternate way to satisfy the remaining 3 spots.
Okay, so just to be clear, the issue before the commission is to sever this obligation to pay the remaining installment payments to allow, and then allow them to use the off-site parking to satisfy their parking requirements, correct?
That's correct. So the site plan, the revised site plan would say 7 spots needed to be satisfied, 4 by pay in lieu, 3 by off-site, which then burdens that other lot, by the way.
That's what I was gonna say. So full disclosure, we let the developer know, or the owner know, that in fact, if they brought in a new plan, which someday we hope that they will build something on that parking lot, they'd have to have an extra 3, or else they would lose the right to these spaces, and then
Right.
they're deficient on the other, on their existing building. So they're aware of that.
They'll cross that bridge when they get to it.
Correct.
Okay. Commissioners, any comments or questions for city attorney? Mr. Kinzick?
Yes, just one. Regarding the parking lot, if my count is correct, it looks like there's 28 spaces. Are there going to be any restrictions on that parking lot, or is it used exclusively for their business?
At this point, it's just for their business.
Okay. Commissioner, any comment? Okay. All right, does anyone feel a need to talk to the applicant? If not, okay. So, the issue before us is whether or not there's a set up for public hearing, yep.
Chairman, make a motion, set a public hearing to review a site plan for amendment at the next available meeting.
Okay, motion by Mr. Gasson, is there support?
Support.
Mr. Kinzick supports. Any discussion amongst the commissioners? None being heard. Mr. Peckins, the roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, so this will be set for public hearing at the September meeting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, 7B, consideration of 1120 North Main Street. This is a request for modification to a previously approved site plan and a special exception request to allow the upper story residential units in the top floors of the proposed building. This, again, is a request to set a public hearing. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, so, this is kind of a good news story. So after the applicant was approved for the plan, activity picked up again across the street at the condos, the 10 condominiums that Mr. Schneider was building. And I think Dominic, he'll talk about this, but he called me and said, oh, those are pretty cool. Looks like there's a demand for folks to live downtown and walk downtown. What would I have to do to come back and modify so that I could go, put residential on the top floor? So there's a couple of things. There's an interpretation that needed to be done about 2.5 stories. In that district, what happens is it's zoned office, but you can use the RT district. RT allows for 2.5 stories. So we had Vidya, and I met with the architect, Mr. Abinatha, and we worked out before we got here to make sure that we could get, it's 3 floors, but it's 2.5 stories by the way that it's defined in the ordinance. And Vidya was good with that. Vidya, I won't speak for you, but I think you'll acknowledge that in your report. So that's why we're here. So they would, it's basically the same footprint, a little more landscaping, a little less parking, but it's pretty neat. And it's, again, adding residents downtown, and he can explain that journey, but that's how it went down with me, so.
Sure.
Video.
Vidya.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nick summarized most of it, but I will quickly go through the site plan. If you recollect, this is a building that is located at the northeast corner of Highland and Main. And previously, the applicant was approved to demolish the existing single-story building there and build a new two-story building that had office on the first floor and second floor. So since then, the applicant has decided not to build that, and now the new proposal is to build office on the first floor and to have 3 townhouse units on the second floor and a half story above it. So the office use is a principal permitted use since the site is zoned O2 restricted office district, and upper story apartments are permitted as a special exception use. The footprint of the building that you see over here remains unchanged since the original approval. The access to the site of Highland Avenue also remains unchanged. The access was discussed in detail when the original site plan came before you, and the police chief had also offered comments such as no left turn into the neighborhood. So you wanted to prevent traffic from an office use going down the neighborhood street. All the improvements to the parking area that were required as part of the original approval remain the same. The sidewalk connections to the building from Main and Highland also continue to remain the same. The building has full access around it. The one thing though was the applicant, I will go to the rendering, so you should be able to see in the rendering. So one of the things the ordinance requires is when you have a non-residential use contiguous with a parking lot that is contiguous with residential use in the same block. Now the property abuts the single-family residential R1 immediately to the east. The required setback for the parking area is 10 feet. But if you look at the site plan, the setback proposed over here ranges from 2.5 to 4.5 feet. This, when the plan originally appeared before you, required a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. The applicant is proposing extensive landscaping in this area to meet the intent of the ordinance to separate the parking lot. However, the Planning Commission does not have the authority to modify the width of the green belt, so the applicant was directed to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. So I just wanted clarification from the applicant if they did in fact go to the ZBA and get the variance. If they got the variance, is it still valid? If not, they will have to go back and get the variance one more time. With regard to parking, the office use requires 5 spaces. The 3 townhouse units requires 6 spaces. Total requirement is 11. They have 15 spaces, so they meet the requirement. The previously proposed lighting and landscaping plan remain completely unchanged. The biggest difference of this proposal will be the height of the building. Previously, the height of the building for a pitched roof, it is measured to the midpoint of the peak. Previously, it was 31 feet. The addition of the half story raises it to 35 feet. So the applicant has provided you with renderings showing the buildings on the other side of the street to show that the increase in building height, it is still within the ordinance limits, but it does not stand out and does blend in with the setting that it is located in. The ordinance defines half story as anything that has got a square footage less than 50% of the square footage of the story beneath it. And the applicant has provided detailed calculations, and we did in fact verify that it is a half story. So they do meet the ordinance requirement for a 2.5 story. At this time, the change from upper story office use to making it 1.5 stories residential use results in minimal change to the site, because most of the aspects of the site, including the detailed architecture for the building, almost remain exactly the same. So it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission schedule this project for public hearing at your next meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Vidya. Any questions or comments by the commissioners to Vidya? Ms. Clauser, go ahead, please.
Vidya, does this align with the future land use map with the mixed use with office space on the bottom and residential on the top?
I did not check it for whether it is compliant with the future land use plan map, but for the most part, Main Street in this portion, I think this parcel remains under the O2 district. It remains designated as office in the future land use plan map, if I'm not incorrect. So if it is office, it would still continue to allow for the mixed use with upper story residential as a special exception use. So it would not be contrary to the master plan.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Mr. Gasson?
Vidya, you mentioned something that made me think that variances can expire. Did I understand that correctly? I thought a variance lived forever.
Variances live forever with a land if the variance has been acted upon within 1 year of the variance being granted. If no construction has commenced within 1 year of granting of the variance becomes null and void, and they have to go back before the ZBA. In this case, I don't think any construction activity was started. So it depends on when, at what point of time last year they went before the ZBA, if they did. So that would depend whether the variance is still valid or has expired.
Thank you.
I can look into that. Went to the ZBA and was approved. I'm not sure the exact date. I might, but if we have to go back, we would go back. And I would also say if they changed anything, that buffer, even an inch, technically it would go back to the ZBA because you're making it more or less conforming. So we'll look into that. I think it's not been a year, but we'll confirm that.
Okay. Commissioners, any other questions? Is the applicant here? Do you mind coming, because I've got just a couple questions. But how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Just your name for us, please.
Yes, good evening. I'm Mark Abenatha with Alexander Bogarts, the architects for the project. Damiano DiMercurio is here as well, the owner and developer of the project, as is Xander Bogarts, the president of our company. We're all here, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mark, do you remember when we went to ZBA? Was it
Yeah,
within a year?
I don't remember the date.
I'm trying to find the date.
Right, that's something that we have to check into. We're hoping that it's still compliant, but we have to look into that date.
One of the questions I have, if you don't mind, is, first of all, I was a big proponent of the original proposal that you guys, I thought it was very, very well done, very tasteful. Because it's going to be a little bit higher than what was before, the question I have is, and I'm looking at the drawing that showed the, I guess it would be looking directly, that would be east, with the two buildings next to one another down the street. Yes. So the building just north of you, that yellow house right there.
Correct.
Have they raised, or are we obligated, or are they compelled to notify them of any change? And are they okay with the height variance or the?
Yeah, well, they'll get a notice for the meeting, and I had talked to them about it. They were more worried about drainage than anything. So Mark, it was in May of 2022, so we'd have to go back to the ZBA.
Okay, all right, so two separate issues. One, you'll have to go back to ZBA, and two, I remember that gentleman coming in about the drain issues, but otherwise.
But he'll be noticed on the new plan.
Okay, so if this goes forward, he'll get a letter saying that he will have an opportunity to come to September meeting.
And the ZBA too.
And the ZBA, okay. That's the only question I had. Gentlemen, any question, and lady, of course, any questions for the applicant? No? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
That's it, yes.
I was going to make a brief presentation.
No, please go right
great.
ahead if you don't.
No, that's great.
Okay.
If you're all set with what we've tried to do, I'll just say that we're really excited about the design change. We believe now that it's really in line with the market. The market was not where we expected it to be for office. It's much more in line as far as the 3 residential units. These are going to be what we consider upper end, more luxury units. We've actually incorporated, I don't know if you noticed in the plan, an elevator for 3 units. That's definitely a luxury component. The ceiling heights, the glass, the amount of openness in the units. We have 2 different unit types, a ranch unit that's geared towards an empty nester, and 2 loft units that are 2-story in nature for maybe a younger market. So we just think it's going to be a great addition. We really respected the architecture that we had originally. It's just a minor 3-foot adjustment to the roof. We incorporated detailing so that we don't lose what we had originally, and we've added some dormer details that we think actually complement the original design. So we're very excited about it, and think it'll be a real success.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, so commissioners, what we're being asked today is to have a motion to set this for a public hearing. Obviously, the change from what was initially planned a couple of years ago now, wow, to modifying it all office into office/residential.
So moved.
Okay, support?
Support.
Okay, any discussion amongst the commissioners? Okay, none being had. Mr. Peckins, the roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, for those at home keeping track, we're now on 7C, consideration of 339 East Street. This is request for site plan approval for a three-story mixed-use development, retail on the first floor and office uses on top two floors at the former site of the Moon River Soap Company. This is also a request to set a public hearing. Mr. City Manager?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, a tragedy happened when Moon River's Soap Company was burned to the ground, basically, electrical fire. And it's sat for a long time, and finally, we found what we think, and the DDA folks think is a great mixed-use development here. So Rito, how I know Rito is through the Silver Spoon. That concept was, and he'll explain this, I'm sure, the pizzas for $5 or less on the first floor. Is that right? Like Little Caesars, something like that. Maybe it's not quite that, but and then take advantage of the second and third floor that is allowed by the ordinance there. So we're real happy about this. They do have and had paid for years ago 9 spaces back in the day with $12,000. So they have a credit of 9 spaces, and I believe when Vinny goes through the report, I think they're still short, but that's kind of unusual to have those in the basket. Those were there forever once they were paid for. So it literally was long time ago. So so with that video.
Thank you, Nick. Members of the commission, as Nick mentioned, this is the site of the former Moon River Soap Company. I shall put up the site plan on screen. The site is located within our downtown and is zoned Central Business District. The applicant is proposing to build a 3-story building. The first story is going to be a restaurant, not retail space. It's going to be a restaurant, and the top 2 stories are going to be office use. A restaurant where patrons are seated on the inside, and the office use on the upper stories are all principal permitted uses in the Central Business District. Just a few summary, the building's total square footage is 7,161 square feet, with each of the floors being exactly the same size, 2,387 square feet. Now, the site has got no dedicated access drive, but it's got the municipal parking lot immediately to its south, which is very convenient. The proposed office and restaurant use spaces, the site requires a total of 40 parking spaces. As Nick mentioned, the applicant has noted on the site plan that they are grandfathered in for 10 parking spaces. So I'll just double check whether it's 9 or 10.
It's 10.
So they're still short of 30 parking spaces, and they will be requesting the city council to approve payment in lieu of 30 parking spaces. The plan the new building will have barrier-free access off East 4th Street. However, there is a secondary entrance that is on the southeast corner of the building right off East Street. And because of the grade slope, the applicant has noted that it's not possible to make this entrance barrier-free accessible. So at this time, the closest handicap accessible space is located all the way at the south end of the municipal parking lot. So we had suggested, this is a suggestion, if the applicant can work with the city to maybe designate this space as a handicap accessible space rather than the space all the way at the bottom of the parking lot. If this space, the municipal parking lot will not lose any net space. It's just change of the handicap accessible space from that end to here, so that this space will provide a shorter route to reach not just this business, but also the businesses next to it. A handicap accessible space here might be more convenient, but I defer to the applicant to work with the city if this is a feasible solution that the DDA is willing to work with them on. There are existing sidewalks along the applicant's both street frontages. Now, when the Moon River Soap Company was here, I have included a small image in my review letter. There used to be landscaping in front of the building. The building was multicolored green, and the landscaping really added to its appearance. It was a really pretty building. Now, the new proposal with the building built up to the property line proposes the entire front area to be covered in concrete. That is a lot of concrete. That is more than enough room for a sidewalk. Our recommendation is that it's going to be a restaurant, so why not create the same landscape base to the building so that it creates an attractive entrance into the building. We would rather have some landscaping, just like it previously was at this corner, rather than include more concrete, which does not seem necessary based upon what we see on the site plan. Concrete over here is not necessary to make this entrance barrier-free accessible or to provide adequate sidewalk area. So we would like the applicant to consider installation of the landscape area again. So the site will be using the DDA's dumpster enclosure near the parking deck. Just wanted clarification if grease waste will also be disposed in those dumpsters, or there is some other method of disposing it. Clarification, rooftop mechanical equipments. This is a 3-story building. So we wanted to see if there are any rooftop mechanical equipments or anywhere on the site. How is it going to be screened? Now the proposed building, I'll go to the elevation so you can see the building elevations. It is, I'm sorry, I needed to go to page 148. So the proposed building is a 3-story structure, and it has got a flat roof. So if I scroll, so the Planning Commission basically, this is the entrance that faces the east side of the building itself. So based upon the elevations that the applicant has presented, the height of the building to the top of the flat roof is 35 feet. The structure is to be constructed of brick. This is all brick with a limestone base and a metal panel wall system, and there is a metal coping that is on top. It is a very, very modern appearance. The facades, the north and the east facades of the building that are visible, and the south facades, they have numerous windows on them. So if I scroll to the other elevations, you can see there are lots of windows on all elevations, but this is the rear elevation that actually faces the parking lot. So we had previously noted, if you look at the west elevation wall, we had noted that the west elevation wall is completely blank. I will scroll to the west elevation. This is the north elevation, and the applicant has also, I'll find the west elevation, but the west elevation abuts another building. However, the building that is immediately to its west is only a story or a story and a half building. So the top portion of this building is clearly visible, and the previous elevation that was proposed was completely blank. It was a solid brick wall. We had suggested that the applicant consider incorporation of some window-like details, even if they are fake windows with spandrel glass, in order to provide relief, because when you're walking east on East Street, all you're going to see is the second and third story that is just solid brick. So we had recommended, and the applicant did revise the elevations to put some windows in, but they actually put in true windows. Now this property is within 3 feet of the neighbor's building. So I would defer to them to work with the building official to find out if a building separation that is only 3 feet allows for windows to be located on it, even though the windows are at the second and third story level, whether the applicant would require to do anything addition to the building in terms of fire suppression or anything else in order to make that happen. Should that become an issue, the applicant can consider putting spandrel glass or something that breaks up the facade without being in conflict with the building codes itself. We do want the Planning Commission to be able to provide some feedback to the applicant with regard to the elevation. The applicant did submit a 3D rendering of the building, which I'll put up on your screen, so you will be able to see. It's taking a minute to go to the elevation. So this is the 3D rendering of the building. It's a very modern appearing building. It's just further east of our main thoroughfare itself. It is in the central business district. So we wanted the applicant to provide some feedback regarding the building architecture, if you find this to be acceptable. We did ask the applicant to submit a colored rendering of the building and also a line of sight diagram. Well, based on the grades we saw, it does appear that Main Street slopes off further east as you go down East Street. So this building is going to be at a much lower level. We still want a line of sight diagram from Main Street to make sure that it does not overwhelm the core historic downtown itself, because we don't want this building to stand out. The plans submitted do address many of the concerns that we had in our previous review letter, but some of the information such as line of sight, mechanical equipment location, and all still remain to be addressed. However, after feedback received today, we would recommend that the Planning Commission consider placing this on your next agenda for consideration of site plan approval and payment in lieu of, subject to the applicant submitting revised plan sets addressing all these concerns and any additional comments the Planning Commission may have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Bandit.
Commissioner, so I want you to know that we don't just take pay in lieu. It's just not a given. The parking lot to the south is a very heavily used parking lot. And Mayor, you know from the DDA, Mr. Knapp is very concerned always about overloading that parking lot because of the restaurants that he happens to own in that area. So again, 30 spaces, that would be the largest pay in lieu we've ever done. But right across the street is our public parking structure that has a very good mixture of when it's full and not full. So we feel like during the day when the office users would really be the people that would use that, there's plenty of parking both in the south lot and in the deck. In the evening, the upper deck fills up a lot. Sometimes the lower deck does not as quickly. All the restaurants basically on Main Street don't have any parking and they survive. So we made sure we sat down with the developer and said, hey, it's not a guarantee you're gonna find a parking spot in either spot. You're just like the rest of the restaurants, kind of fighting for spaces. But we feel like because of the predominance of the office, which will not be open when basically the restaurant's open and compete, we would be okay with this such a large waiver of parking. So we would end up supporting that waiver based on the fact that it's adjacent to two significant parking lots.
Okay. That being said, commissioners, any questions for the city manager or Vidya? Okay, I'm going to go with Mr. Lord first, because we'll work our way in.
Vidya, can you just clarify for me how the ordinance calculates building height?
So for a flat roofed building, the height of the building is measured from grade till the top of the flat roof. So on this image, it'll go exactly from the base, from grade to the top of the metal coping, the building height. In case of a pitched roof, it would be measured to the midpoint of the gable.
Okay, so in this situation, it would be I guess the tallest point of the building since the grade changes across. And then if I compare it to, just from an expectation standpoint, if I compare to, the former building that was there, it's basically taking the peak. Because that peak would have been at about 35 feet, or at least, the midpoint of that peak would have been at 35 feet. That's how that would have been calculated.
When you say previous building, are you referring to the Moon River Soap Company?
Yes.
Yes. So the previous building, I'm not sure how tall the Moon River Soap Company was, but I believe it was shorter than 35 feet when measured to the midpoint of the peak. At least in the Google Street images where the building still shows up, it wasn't this tall, but yes. The height of the Moon River Soap Company would have been measured to the midpoint of their gable. So they would have had height even above that. Yeah. The actual top of the roof would have been higher than whatever the midpoint was.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the rendering that was given, and it could just be the angle of it. It just looks like it's so much bigger than the neighboring property when you compare it to a Google Street view, which shows the old
That's what I'm looking
river.
at. And I think the gable versus the rectangular makes massing much different.
Right, but there's no variance needed for this so there's really nothing to talk about in that regard. So I just wanted from my own perspective to set the expectation.
Mr. Kenzie?
Yes, a couple of things. I drove by the property today and took a look, and I guess I have some concerns about the sidewalk along East Street. The sidewalk itself is probably okay, but I don't think this picture shows it. There's a former driveway that if Moon River was there, that driveway probably went to nowhere.
Right, well, actually, they had behind the building, if I through the chair,
Yes.
they had one parking space behind the building, that was the approach to get to that one spot.
Okay.
It was like a loading zone originally, and they turned that into a parking spot, so that would have to come out, continue the curb, continue the sidewalk.
Well, the other thing is the curb. There's virtually no curb.
Right.
And the sidewalk, at least, at first glance, looks like it's literally at the same level as the street. The sidewalk, or the right away on the opposite side of the street, it looks like it had been repaired or upgraded somewhere in time. So I guess the question is, would either the city or the developer here, basically fix the curb and, along the east side of their building?
Totally fair question. So that is one that's on our capital improvement program, to rip the whole street out. We need a new storm sewer down the middle of the street. So we would be putting that back to a full curb all the way down at the city's expense when we do that project. Probably won't be for 3 years, but that will be rectified in the end.
Okay. And then I guess the other comment I have is in regards to the planter in front of the building. The property right next to the building has a planting area that's probably 6 to 8 feet deep. And then as you go further up the street, the planting area gets smaller and smaller. With the number of windows and things that are on this building, I just don't see how they would really fit something like that without changing the physical characteristics of the building.
So I believe the rendering actually is showing the sidewalk in front to this area to be a lot narrower than it is represented on the site plan. The rendering is mostly focusing on the building rather than the site plan itself. If we look at the site plan, the width of the concrete area is significant. This is where the bank of windows stops, and all this area is actually concrete. But if you look at the rendering, the sidewalk looks like it's just about 5 feet. Actually, there's a lot more space than that over there. So my recommendation was, if there is a feasibility after leaving the 5-foot sidewalk clearance, to put in some kind of landscaping. It would actually soften the appearance of the building, because it would add for some greenery, as you mentioned, Commissioner Kinship, that building next door to it has got a planter, and that definitely adds to the visual appeal of the building. It could do the same to this building, especially with how much glass is there on the frontage. So if there is adequate sidewalk clearance, maybe they could consider building a raised planter or something against the building wall.
Okay. And then the last comment is, there is a parking spot currently right in front of the building on, 4th Street. Maybe that's the one designated as a handicap spot.
We had the same discussion whether public on-street parking can be designated as a handicap spot when we discussed Oak Street design.
Right.
And I believe there was some concern whether you can do that to an on-street parking spot, because it does not provide ample room for safe entry to the building. I don't know if currently that space is handicap accessible, and if it's going to continue to remain. Maybe Nick can answer that question, if that's something the city does, because I know this came up when we discussed Oak Street design.
It was, and having experience with this, handicap's not always in the rear of the van or the car. It could be on the side. So then you're opening your car and putting people in danger, so we don't put them on the streets. But that's a fair question.
That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Gasson, any questions for you?
Yeah, you mentioned in your report something like, we don't want it to stand out. And I think you were putting in historical context maybe. And I just wanted a further explanation of what do you mean we wouldn't want it to stand out. To me, it stands out. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I just want to understand what you were saying.
Yes, apologies for the choice of words. What I meant is, we do want the building to stand out as an attractive new building, but anytime a building is built in the central business district, or in the future, these areas that would be designated as downtown edge 1 and 2, what we look to see is that the architecture or the height of the building, it's not even the architecture, it's the height of the building, does not detract from the line of sight of core downtown. So when you're standing on the sidewalk in downtown, nothing needs to impede the line of sight. You need to be able to see all of downtown and not buildings that are on the periphery and on the side streets. So that's what I meant by the building not standing out, not in terms of architecture. In terms of architecture, we don't want it to be beautiful. So that's what I meant. The height should not overwhelm the downtown such that when you're looking at a downtown building, in the back you see other buildings sticking up and detracting from the line of sight on downtown.
Thank you.
I can throw in, if I may, if you go to the other end of the street on Google Earth, that's not traditional, it's a brick building with a mansard roof. You can kind of see it in the background. So it's it's almost like bookends on the street. It would be very difficult to not be different than the little buildings that are going to the west. And that's, always that transition is tough, but the fact that Mr. Misselfeld was approved to build a brick, basically this size building at the other end, it kind of bookends, like I said, that side street. On Main Street, that would be a whole different story.
You're talking Third.
All the way down to the corner of Third.
Right, not the pharmacy. It's
correct.
the- Yeah.
Yep, yes, correct.
It actually blends quite well with the parking structure.
It does, it does.
I'm going to shift over to this side of the table. Commissioners, any questions? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I think it's a good project. I guess my comment would be any softening you can do would help, because it looks a little, well, I was gonna say, it just looks big, right? So, I mean.
I think Vinny's idea of raised planters, there's a place in Lake Orion, Anita's Kitchen, that had the exact same scenario, that a building burned down and they rebuilt that, and they were able to, and she's right, that sidewalk's way wide there. It doesn't show up good in the rendering, but you can put a nice, even a 2-foot or 18-inch raised planter, you could really soften it, Mayor, and I think that's well pointed out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I believe when we reviewed Oak Street design, they did that. Mayor, would it be amenable to, would the Planning Commission be amenable? Maybe the white is a little bit stark. Maybe if the white metal portions could be a softer gray color, it might blend well better with the building without creating mass. I believe the fact that it is bright white gives the illusion of more mass. So maybe the color can be softened, the white portion.
You know, just some ideas like that, I think would help, because I think if we put that as it is right now, people would be like, wow. So something I think we need to work on. It'd be a comment of mine.
Sure, absolutely. Commissioner Clauser.
I was gonna ask, if you could remind me, they're not asking for a special exception or anything. So how much can we comment on design and?
You can, on it, within reason. Yeah. We'll keep it at that.
Okay, thank you.
Becomes subjective, obviously.
Right, okay.
But.
Well, actually, the zoning ordinance does have a specific section that allows the Planning Commission to comment on the architecture of buildings in the Central Business District, section 2118. Even though it's a principal permitted use, you do have the right to comment on any building that is built in the downtown.
She's 100% right.
And Jessica, you know, we can say whatever we feel like.
That's right.
Perfect, good. I'm gonna leverage that section then. I also think the project's great, like having two levels of office space as well as the restaurant on the bottom is exciting. I kind of echo some of the comments on that you've already heard about. It's very startling, and it doesn't feel, it's a nice modern building, but it doesn't feel like it fits the area, especially when all the buildings on that street are more or less residential properties that have been turned into commercial, and now you have a giant building there. So I would echo what the mayor said about softening it in any way we could. And then Nick, your comment about the bookends, I agree, the brick matches, and that I think the difference to me is the pitched roofing still. You still have this like flat box, modern look. So I would, like I said, echo what you've heard, and then I also think the greenery would help a lot in softening it. That also matches, like Figo, that salon next door, and then what you see on the road. Those are
That's very, very good. Mr. Stone, any comments?
Nothing that hasn't been said. Will the windows open and create more of a street going right into the restaurant to connect the whole space?
There's a detail in there.
We'll have you come up in just a second. Yeah, only because the record, that's okay, yep.
Yeah, and aside from that, the white, I mean, I think it's a nice building. I think people will be in shock when it's constructed as it is next to the neighboring buildings currently.
Have you ever met Rito?
We're gonna meet him in a second, yeah.
It's all me, sir.
Mr. Chief, did you have a question or comment?
No, just a comment, Mr. Chairperson, picking off of a comment that Vidya made. If the building on the west side of this building, because of the property line and its closeness to the other buildings, would be required to be fire resistant. So any window glass in there would have to be fire resistant. So if you were looking at that wall, we would probably say, think about looking at windows or false brick windows that are there. And then keep in mind, if you take a look at the, what was built as the Tide Cleaners building, the east wall on that is very big. And it was done that way because it's adjacent to another piece of property. And should that property owner ever want to build the same height of building, they would have to do, those walls would have to match up. In other words, they'd have to be fire resistant. So please keep in mind that when you take a look at what you have there, although those buildings between Main Street and this building are very quaint and very nice and great businesses, somebody someday may want to tear those down and build additional buildings there. And I just bring that to your attention because then windows on the west side of that building that is being proposed could be blocked by another property that's building there. So just keep in mind that at this point in time, that one west wall would probably need to be constructed windowless, with that thought process in mind in regards to the fire resistant rating of the adjacent buildings.
Thank you, it's very good to know that. Is the applicant here by chance? If you want to come up for a few moments.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Jeff Rizza with Fenn and Associates. We are the land surveyors and civil engineers. I'm not the architect, so.
Okay.
And I'm here with Paolo Longo, the developer and owner. So,
I think you've heard the comments, and I know you've heard the comments, and I think there's a lot of positives about this. I think maybe to come back, is there's any way to soften it, just to, you know, to do what you can a little bit to the exterior there. And again, I'm the last person who should be giving any type of design tips, but I think from my personal view, I love the building. I like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I like that style very much. I think the challenge is gonna be trying to blend that style with the existing style, you know what I'm saying? And so it doesn't look like you're just crashing into one another. Any type of buffering that you could do to come up with something, I think would probably go a long way. But again, I mean, I get it. It falls within the height requirements, correct? And it's certainly a permitted use. So to the extent that you've heard what we said and can take that back a little bit and do some tweaking, it would probably help you out in the long run.
Sure.
Those are just my thoughts.
Paolo, how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
And majority of the building is brick, so it's really close to what's already in Rochester.
Agreed.
We can change, you know, and modify the part.
Instead of white, we make it brownish.
Yeah, we can change the, you know, color of the white, you know, like more like gray, or we can work with that. That's not a problem.
I think I would echo what Mr. Stone had said, is like, it's there. Like, you're not gonna miss it. And when people are walking downtown, it's certainly gonna be a presence. And it's not a bad presence, it's just going to be there. So those are just my comments. But Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Mr. Stone, or I'm sorry, Mr. Lord, I'm sorry.
Okay. The south elevation is another one we didn't really hit on yet, but that's just a big brick wall, which is great, but if there's any way to soften that a little bit, add a little bit of, break it up just a little bit with, you know, like a something. It's not gonna add cost, but just kind of
limestone or something like that.
something. That would be great. And then I would say, as you're looking at options for the front, when you do come in, next with a material board, something to look at, that might be helpful too, because the renderings are great, but seeing that would be helpful.
The architect usually bring in a board showing what kind of brick and
Yeah.
materials end up being color-wise, so we can look at that.
Yeah.
You know, as far as the landscaping goes, you know, one of the things that they would like to do are the, you know, elevated planters. But they probably look at it, trying to do them in sections, because they do have doors that are gonna open. They'd like to throw a table or two out there if they could, but, you know, if not, you know.
Yeah, that wouldn't have, because you have to have a clear 5-foot sidewalk, you won't get both of those, so
Okay.
unfortunately, yeah.
You could just at least have the doors.
But I think, you know, planters, whether they're staggered or continuous or linear, I think, anything I think would be, and I mean this in the nicest way, an enhancement and a betterment as to what's there with respect to softening.
Yeah.
Okay. Any commissioners, any other questions? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the ask of the commissioners now is to, if there's an interest, to have this matter set for public hearing. So we would ask for a motion.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, support?
Support.
Mr. Stone, okay, discussion amongst the commissioners? None being had. Mr. Packins, the roll call, please.
Hauser,
Yes.
Vixen,
Yes.
Clauser,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, so I committed this to video, so whenever we do this, it's a short turnaround. And we have to give her 3 weeks to review, so we're gonna, tomorrow, we will call the developer and say, you have a week to get these modifications in, full sets of plans, because if not, it's gonna have to wait another month, because it's impossible for her to review them. She's been working on weekends because we're getting stuff
Sure.
too tight, and we're gonna tighten it up a little bit.
No, I get it.
So.
Okay, thank you. Buonasera. All right, you're all done. Yep, prego. Okay. All right, now to 7D, consideration of 415 Walnut Avenue. This is a request for site plan approval for the former School of Rock building for conversion to a gathering space on the first floor, along with a special exception request to allow for upper story apartments on the second floor. Again, this is a request to set a public hearing. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you. Mr. Wilhelm is here this evening. There he is. So Glenn purchased the former Village Shoe-Ins, turned it into our very successful Roxy venue. When this opportunity came up, I remember meeting with Glenn and saying, it'd be nice to control if they share a parking lot. Maybe it's something you do in conjunction with the Roxy, and he was able to make that happen. So the video can go over the explanation of what's planned here, but again, a mixed use for the apartments to the above. And the gathering space on the first floor, which I'm sure Glenn can explain when it's time.
Vidya, it's all
Yes.
yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the commission, I will share the site plan. As Nick mentioned, you're all familiar with the Roxy site. Roxy was approved in 2022 as an entertainment venue. It was classified as a theater, which is a principal permitted use in the central business district. Now, what the applicant is doing is taking this existing building that was previously the School of Rock and making it a gathering space for people before the events or shows take place at the Roxy. So technically, the use would be classified as an ancillary use to the theater use of the Roxy. And so we would consider it also as being a permitted use. And the fact that the building will have gathering space on the first floor and the second floor will be an apartment, once again, upper story apartments are permitted as a special exception through the zoning ordinance. So the site has got an existing access of Walnut Street. When we reviewed the Roxy, we knew that both of these sites did share a lot of their access of Walnut and then this one-way exit onto Pine Street. So there are currently shared access easements between the two properties. So those must be noted with the page number and LIBOR number to ensure that those access easements were recorded on the site plan. It's just something that is part of an official legal record for the property, so we need to know that. The access drive of Walnut, we believe it is two-way movement of vehicles, but it would be good if the site plan actually notes its width, so we know exactly how much we have to work over here. Now, when you look at the site plan, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. The site plan shows a new ADA landing area on the south side of the building, and then there is a ramp that goes up providing access to this building because it's currently not ADA accessible. But in their parking calculations, they have counted this ADA landing area as a parking space. It cannot be a landing area and a parking space if it's intended for either drop-off for handicap accessible people, or it is intended as a parking space. It cannot be both. So that clarification needs to be provided on the site plan. Based upon the parking calculations on the plan, as per occupancy load, the applicant notes that a total of 12 parking spaces are required for a maximum occupancy load of 35 people. But the cover letter that accompanied the application said that they would have 25 to 40 people in there. Now, if an occupancy load is established for the building, it is very important that the occupancy load is complied with, not for parking purposes, but it is for building safety purposes. There is a reason there are occupancy loads established by building and fire. So we would advise the applicant to make sure that if an occupancy load is posted for that gathering space, that they ensure that they do not exceed it. With regard to the gathering space and the apartment, a total of 14 parking spaces are required, including one handicap accessible space. The site has a total of 9 parking spaces over here and one handicap accessible space. So it's got a shortfall of 6 parking spaces. When the Roxy was approved, the applicant had sought approval of payment in lieu of 71 parking spaces with the intention of using the city's west parking garage, which is in close proximity. The 6 space shortfall at this time will also require approval of payment in lieu of. Since the Roxy has been in operation for a while, the Planning Commission should be able to get feedback from Mr. Banda and from the applicant whether the payment in lieu of has worked and the site is not a source of parking nuisance. So if that is the case, then the Planning Commission can consider asking the City Council to approve payment in lieu of 6 additional parking spaces. We had asked for proposed trash removal on the site to be addressed. When the Planning Commission approved the plan for the Roxy, you approved the construction of a brand new dumpster enclosure on the northwest corner of the Roxy. The latest Google satellite maps, actually I use a more advanced software, which is called NearMap. As of May 31st of this year, the dumpster has still not been constructed. When something is approved on a site plan, it must be constructed. So I believe that is something that is still part of Roxy's site plan. And now you're adding more people and uses. So I think the first step should be construction of the dumpster enclosure, which was already approved for the site plan. That's not yet on the site and should be there. The location of the applicant has submitted a floor plan, but there seems to be some ambiguity in the way the hallway and the vestibule are located. If you look at the site plan for the first floor, the floor plan for the first floor and the second floor, they don't seem to line up. It seems like the staircase is coming out in the wrong place. Maybe the arrows are not in the correct place, but we would just like the applicant to clarify that the floor plan is fully functional in terms of egress from the top floor and from the first floor itself. Per the plan, in the front of the building along Walnut, there are currently a few existing trees. The applicant is going to remove all of that and put in some new ornamental and perennial shrubs. And so they have submitted a rendering to show what this building is going to look like. It's a colored rendering. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see. This is the current elevation of the building, and this is what the applicant proposes for it to look like. This rendering shows that any trees or anything that are in front are being removed, and they are going to put this in. Now, the site plan has got a landscape strip along its entire north property line. We had recommended previously that they plant a row of shrubs over there to provide a separation between their parking lot and the parking lot to the north. Now their landscape plan does show some shrubs, but the shrubs are spaced so far apart, it's not really a hedge. In order for boxwood shrubs, which is what they're proposing, to create a proper hedge, they need to be planted 2 to 3 feet apart, not 7 to 9 feet. 7 to 9 feet, they would just stand out separately. So more shrubs are needed along the north property line of the parking lot. Now, there is a rendering. This area is actually, under this portico is the area that is supposed to be the ADA loading area, the handicap loading area. I'm not sure what exactly the siding and the fence in front is in this rendering. Not really understanding its functional, wondering if this is something that was incorrectly placed, because this area on the site plan is actually shown as a paved area with a ramp that goes into the building. So this whole siding piece and this fence here actually does not make any sense as relates to the site plan and the architectural plan. So I want the applicant to clarify if maybe this is incorrect, this rendering needs to be corrected. Provided the items in our review letter are addressed, we would recommend that you place the Roxy House for consideration of site plan and special exception approval at your next planning commission meeting. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Vidya. Commissioners, any questions for the city planner?
Yes.
Yeah. Mr. Kinzick, go right ahead, please.
I'm not sure exactly who to direct this question or comment to, but this was the second site that I visited today, and the house is in a little bit of disrepair. In fact, the front elevation shows that there's a hanging gutter. In the back, there's a hanging gutter. What's not seen in the northwest elevation is, I'm not sure if it's a door or a window, but it's boarded up on the back side.
Correct.
And it also, there's a broken window frame that, is also on the northwest elevation. So there's a number of things that I'm assuming, will need to be fixed before they get an occupancy permit.
Yeah, of course, yeah. All those things are gonna be addressed when we do the planned construction here. Yeah. So
Mr. Wilhelm, why don't you just state your name for the record,
Oh, sure,
please?
yeah,
That's
Glenn
fine.
Wilhelm, 401 Walnut.
Thank you.
So, yeah, the backstory with this a little bit is when we bought the Roxy, the building next door was owned by the gentleman who owned the Village Shoe Inn, and kind of on unexpectedly, the School of Rock people moved out without him realizing that the lease was up, and so we started negotiating with Chuck about purchasing that as well. Nick's 100% right. We really didn't feel we wanted someone else to go in there, and the properties are too close together, and I thought there might be some issues if someone else went in there to do an office or some other use for that. So that's what kind of initiated us purchasing the building. The plan is that we get all the siding repaired, just like we did at the Roxy, painting all the existing siding. The area that you were referring to in the back was a former window that got covered up to a doorway. So all those things would be addressed right away.
Can you talk about that panel that we're talking about?
Yeah,
Portico shades.
that's an issue with the rendering. So that blue panel that video's on right there, that's actually farther back, almost flush with the front of the building.
So the ramp's in front of it.
Yeah, it runs almost flush with the front of the building, so that's a little deceiving there on the rendering. All the things that Vidya had addressed in her letter, we did get plans redone with that, but I didn't want to submit them until we got anything else that needed to be done. But that, the ADA parking spot, that was a mistake, so that was removed out of there. And I think what the confusion with the parking was that there's a current garage in the building that we were gonna let the tenant use for the upstairs. So that was the one parking spot that we were confused on there.
Mr. Chairman, I can confirm that the usage of the 70 parking spaces, whatever it was, has not been an issue. It's been a boon for the city.
That's what I was-
So using the deck, they're actually, Mr. Wellman, I talked about, a lot of clients would go downtown, eat, so they're not necessarily all going in the deck. They're spread out all over the place downtown, and then they walk to the Roxy, and when they come out, they rock back. So it's not been an issue.
My question was, how was parking? Because I remember when you came here for the Roxy, that was one of the big concerns, is how are we gonna manage it? And the traffic flow has been good so far?
Absolutely, we haven't had an issue.
Sure. When we have events, because I work the front door a lot, when we have events, you clearly see people walking down the alley behind the corner bar, coming up from the Cruz Amures area. There's people walking all over. Very few I honestly think about 80 to 85% of the people coming to the Roxy are dining somewhere prior to it. And you see, very rarely do you see people pulling into the parking lot or into the parking garage and then walking straight over. They're coming from other areas.
Mr. Wilhelm, I saw in the packet here, it says the site plan narrative. Can you just tell us a little bit more and expand on what the purpose and use of this building would be?
Sure.
Thank
So, as I said at the beginning, we kind of backed into this building because we didn't want someone else to get it, so we were kind of finding a use, what would make sense for it. So the Roxy's been open just over a year now, and one of the consistent things that I'm seeing is that we're having groups of 25, 30, 35 people that they're buying tickets and they have birthday parties or gatherings, and they're having problems getting into the restaurants, because groups of that size are difficult to do at a restaurant that's not set up for doing those type of more banquety type of events. So we recognize the need for it early on, and I think it's clear that we're going to be using those groups that are already buying the tickets, they're already coming to town, that they're going to be going over there for a gathering prior to coming over.
Okay, so in that vein, is this going to be used as like as a kitchen, as a restaurant, as a bar, or is it just people bring their own? How does that work?
So we do all of our, when we do events that have food service at the Roxy, it's all prepared out of my restaurant in Oakland Township, the Oakland Kitchen and Bar. So everything is prepared there, and the health department approved us having holding facilities or holding boxes at the Roxy so everything's prepared over there, bring it to the Roxy, it goes in these holding boxes, and then it goes out to be served. So very similar situation that we would do at the house here. Everything would be you're not ordering off of a menu, you're not coming in and ordering off of a menu, everything's pre-done, we know what we're serving to you, we know how many people are coming, we prepare it at the Oakland, and we bring it over that afternoon.
Okay, and to that end, is there going to be alcohol served there?
So I've had discussions with our liquor license attorney, Kelly Allen. There's a couple different options that can be, there's different avenues with the state that it can be done. A bistro license is one, or there is an avenue for our current license to be, because the properties are adjacent to each other, there's an avenue for the current license to be used in that building. And the way Kelly explained it is almost like if you had a deck, almost like, the current restaurants that have decks, that your license extends out to that area. So the add-on, yeah, exactly. So this was the first step. And then, once we get through this step with the planning commission, if everything looks good, then we plan on pursuing with the Liquor Control Commission the best way to achieve that.
And I'm sorry for all the questions, but the reason I'm asking these is because I want to get in front of any concerns residents may have.
Sure.
Another bar, another restaurant type deal, and that's not what it's going to be. The building to the white there, is that a salon?
No, that's the painted, that's a paint.
Oh, the pot, okay.
That's a painted pot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's not a private residence, and behind you there's not a house behind it, correct? To the west?
On the other side of Pine.
On the other side?
Yeah,
right.
Not this. Yeah, nothing, no houses behind that.
Yeah,
no.
Paint Creek Center for the Arts.
Paint Creek Center, okay, all right, yep. And then no musical performances there, just a gathering spot for before, what about after the shows?
A little bit of that, I'd like some leeway to call it, as, if it turned into some people wanted to go there for dessert afterwards or something like that, I wouldn't want to pigeonhole myself into not doing that, but that's not the original intent.
Okay, that's fine, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions? I didn't mean to monopolize the Q&A.
Vidya did bring up, sorry.
Mr. Kenzie, go right ahead, and then Mr. Clausen, we're good.
Vidya did bring up the issue of the garbage bin.
Yeah, so there was a couple things, we bought this property in the spring when we were planning on building the dumpster enclosure. And then we weren't sure exactly where, while we put these two parcels together, we were thinking, should we put the dumpster enclosure closer to the house and away from the Roxy and all those type of things? Nothing ever worked out the way we thought. So construction on the dumpster enclosure starts next week, the one that was originally approved by you. One of the other things that we found out actually operating the Roxy, because we don't have any hand towels, everything's electric dryers. The beer cans, we don't want any glass in the building, so everything's a beer can that gets picked up by the beer companies. the trash that we have at the end of the night, even if as full as we are, it might be 3 garbage bags. So it's not it wasn't a huge, you know, it just wasn't a huge thing for us to take care of 3 garbage bags. You know, and building a dumpster enclosures aren't the prettiest things to look at. So the need honestly really isn't there for the Roxy to have a dumpster enclosure. But when I was talking to Nick, you know, we should have one, and we'll put it in. It's going to be it'll be the smallest one allowable by the dumping companies. It'll be a really small one that's in there just because we don't have a need for it. But we'll put that in.
Mr. Kenzie, any follow-ups? No? Councilwoman?
My comment was only adding on to what you were saying, Commissioner Hauser, about like, while there's not residential around that space, you are planning on renting right above the gathering space.
Right.
Right, and so I could see there being some complaints there, but not much we can do about that, but maybe you can put in noise canceling insulation between floors or.
Well, I've got a little bit of a leg up on that. It's gonna be my daughter who goes to Oakland University. So, she's gonna be in that space for the term of that she'll be at the school, so.
She'll complain to the landlord if it's, there you go.
She's used to that, right?
All right. Any other questions from the commissioners? Anyone? Okay. So, that being said, this too is a request to set a public hearing. So that being said, is there a motion to set this matter for a public hearing?
I'll make that motion, but can I ask a question?
You can ask anything you like.
Is there gonna be a designated parking space for the residential component?
So that was included in Vidia's number that we needed. So when she said the required numbers, it was 2 for the apartment and then the rest for the downstairs.
So it'll be signed and designated as this?
Yeah, we'll put, so the handicap one will be signed and then the 2 apartment ones will be signed as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Make a motion for the next public hearing.
Okay. Is there support?
I'll support.
I'm sorry.
I'll support.
Okay, Councilperson Clauser. Okay, support. Any discussion? None being had. Mr. Peckins, the roll call, please.
Hauser.
Yes.
Bixson.
Yes.
Clauser.
Yes.
Gasson.
Yes.
Kenjuk.
Yes.
Lloyd.
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Glenn, take it easy. Okay, let's move on to line item 8, miscellaneous, and it looks like there's an upcoming review of proposed new RM1 and RM2 zoning classifications in accordance with the new master plan. Mr. City Manager.
Absolutely. As we talked about earlier, we got to close the loop, get those 2 done, and then we're going to create a workshop. We'll work with the mayor and council, where we all meet together. Because a lot of folks on the planning commissions, city council weren't even here when we did the next master plan that we just finished in 2022. So we want to get this started. So we'll give it to you next month, take 1 month, set a public hearing, move that on, and then we'll get together probably in October, we hope, to have our, September, October, okay, to have the joint meeting between the council and planning commission.
Okay. I know these past couple of meetings have been pretty significant with docket entries. Is next month looking to be big as to, no?
You shouldn't have anything, with what we set for public hearings.
We'll set for public hearing, but any new things coming up?
Maybe one thing.
Okay, all right. All right, next, public comment. Is there anyone in the crowd or online who would like to come up to the lectern and make a public comment? Mr. Smith? No? Okay, all right. Oh, Mr. Gans.
I was gonna add something to miscellaneous if I could. Just a question to administration. How is the implementation for the short-term rental amendment gone?
Yep, Jeff, we're good now, right? I'm trying to think of when.
I don't know when it was published, but.
Yeah, I'll have to look at when it was published. I don't know the exact date. We'll find that out.
But has there been somewhat of a cordial communication between those people that are doing that and understanding that there's a change coming?
Exactly.
Everybody's kind of
we've had a lot of new ones thinking they could, and we told them, we gave them the dates, the meeting, the minutes, all that good stuff to say, you can't do that anymore in residential districts. So I'll find out the date that they got published, and it should be it was about 30 days, so.
And Mr. Bandit, to be clear, the enforcement and implementation of that restriction of short-term rentals, that's citizen and resident driven, correct?
Driven, right.
Okay, all right. So any other questions about miscellaneous, anything, comment like that? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to line item number 3, which is the election of the planning commission officers. As you know, there has been a vacancy of the chair for the past couple meetings. At this time, though, under Michigan statute, I cannot be the chair. So, because as a city council representative at large, I am prohibited by law to be the chair. So, we are going to hold an election to do that now. So I guess, if there's a motion, or Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Are you ready for nominations?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll take nominations, and then we will do an up or down vote, and we'll go from there, and we'll literally pass the gavel, okay? There you go.
Mr. City Attorney, do we need a second if you nominate, or is it?
I don't think it's that detailed. I think it's just, much like we do with, city council members choosing the mayor. I think it's very workable. Just say, put somebody up for nomination, then you vote, and then first person to get 5 is the chair, and then you do the same process for vice chair. And then, we don't have a treasurer, but secretary. Is this the time, I don't remember if this is the time of year that we do this, or if we're just doing just this one position.
Back, I think it was maybe in April or May, we did the elections, and it was Mr. McGee chair, me vice, and Mr. Kenzick was the treasurer, I believe, or secretary.
Yeah.
Secretary.
So I think the only thing you would do at this point would be the chair.
The chair, yes. So, Mr. Mayor, go right ahead.
Yes, so I would like to nominate Commissioner Gasson to be the chair.
All right, and do we, I'm sorry, do we just?
See if there's other
Just see
nominations.
if there's other
okay.
nominations.
I support.
You're it.
Did Mr. Casson object?
Everybody step backwards.
Yeah, everyone, yeah, hot potato, yes, okay, so I guess with a formal nomination and a support, we'll take the roll?
Yes.
Okay, so, Mr. Peckins, I'll let you do the honors.
Hauser,
Yes.
Bixson,
Yes.
Klauser,
Yes.
Gasson,
Yes.
Kenjuk,
Yes.
Lloyd,
Yes.
Stone.
Yes.
Okay, congratulations, Mr.
He's welcome back.
Yes. Now, just very quickly, how long have you been on planning commission?
12.
If you gotta think about it that long, it's been.
1996.
Okay, so 31 years, right?
31 years.
Right around there somewhere, is that it?
Mr. Gasson
Yeah.
was
28,
the chairman
yeah.
of the council of the planning commission when I first got on city council.
A direct descendant from the Graham family who founded Rochester. I'm kidding. Yes, and so. That's it. All right, well, listen, congratulations, and starting next month, you will be sitting in this chair, okay?
Looking forward to it.
All right, so listen, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. It was a very thorough meeting, very detailed, and it's over. Good night, everyone.